Okay.
About it
Good evening.
What? I'm not loud enough. Wait.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Municipal Land Use Borough of River Edge, July 13th, 2020. It is now 7:33. My apologies for my 3 minutes tardiness. We're going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start out with a flag salute. Mayor, would you take us?
Sure. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sure the many residents that watch this meeting on a weekly basis, you'll notice that Mr. Castellan is sitting in a different seat than he usually is. He has a conflict for the next application after the first one, so he decided to let me fill in for him tonight. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Roll call, please.
I'm going to do the statement
Yep.
for open public meetings. This meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held in compliance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and associated regulations. Notice of this meeting was published in the Bergen Record on January 8th, 2022, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall and posted on the borough's website, and made available for review in the board clerk's office. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available for review on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and in the board clerk's office. Please silence all cell phones and wait to be recognized by the chairperson during the meeting. When making a public comment, please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record. And please also remember to speak loudly into the microphones because we have paper shuffling. It's hard for our secretary to record the minutes. All right.
Now roll call,
Now,
please.
roll call. Okay. All right. Mr. Mayor.
Present.
Mr. Castellan.
Here.
Ms. Boland. Here. Mr. Merman.
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer.
Here.
Mr. Cray.
Here.
Mr. Arkelian.
Here?
Councilman Kanigo is excused. Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
Mr. Esposito.
Here.
Mr. Bastide.
Here.
Also here tonight is myself, Marina Steinley, the board attorney, our planner, Tom Behrens, our engineer, Robert Costa, and our traffic engineer, Mr. Lee Klein.
And our fine secretary, Lisa.
Yes, always.
Okay. First order of business is the approval of the minutes for 5/25/22. Everybody should have received them in an email from our clerk. Are there any adjustments or any revisions? If not, I'll take a motion to accept.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I need
The
all in
second was
favor? Yeah.
Mr. Esposito.
We can do all in favor for minutes,
Yeah,
right?
we can do all in favor, but I'll just list those who are ineligible to vote. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Castellan, Mr. Pfeffer, and the councilman who's absent.
So all in favor of acceptance of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained?
Abstained.
Okay. So we have a memorialization, that's the Yeshiva of North Jersey, 666 Kinderkabak Road, Block 616, Lot 9, and that was to install solar panels. And if you remember, we approved that a couple meetings ago, and we have the memorialization in front of us. Were there any adaptions to that, Ms. Sir?
Excuse me?
Any changes need to be done, or?
I can't vote on that, Yeshiva.
Okay.
I was not
Okay,
present.
oh, that's right, okay. Anybody else have any changes or corrections? If not, I will accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And that we will take a roll call on.
Yes. And I'll only call those eligible to vote. Mr. Castellan,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes,
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
and the motion passes.
okay. Next up, we have completeness review for 680 Kinderkabak Road. That's block,
We have one more memorialization.
oh, I'm sorry, yes, the memorialization for the master plan revisions and regulations. If you remember, a couple meetings ago, we went over the master plan with our planner. We made some recommendations. I believe everything has been incorporated. You would have had an opportunity to review it in the email that was sent to you a while ago. Are there any revisions or any questions, comments? It's going well so far. I'll take a motion to adapt the update on the master plan.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Caslin?
Mr. Caslin and Mr. Cray.
Mr. Caslin was absent at that meeting, so we'll
Okay.
just need a different motion.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Cray, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. And again, I'll only call those who are eligible to vote. Ms. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Cray?
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Okay, now we have a completeness review, and that's for Tower Management, 680 Kindercamack Road, Block 616, Lot 20. And this is to install an emergency generator. They need a setback variance for the building. Are the people present?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Kelly. I'm with the firm of Kelly, Marana, and Tuckman on behalf of Tower Management, the applicant. With me is my witness, Mr. David Dublair, who's a principal of Tower.
Be seated.
Thank you.
So prior to the meeting, I reviewed the proofs submitted by the applicant and notice provided to the newspaper and found them to be complete and acceptable for the board to have jurisdiction over the application tonight.
Tom?
And in reviewing the application materials, they appear to be complete, so the applicant can proceed this evening.
Mr. Costa, you have anything to add?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Any questions from the board on completeness? I have a motion to accept this as a complete application.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Boland?
All right.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Caslin?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer?
Yes.
Mr. Cray?
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito is seated to vote tonight for the record, for this application.
Yes.
And then Mr. Bastide.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
So, as a second alternate tonight, we have a full dais, pretty much a full dais. We have one person missing. So Bruce is the senior. So you can ask all questions that you want. You can weigh in as much as you want. You just don't get a vote in the end. Okay? Okay. Please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have what I hope is a relatively simple application for this board to hear this evening. My client is a 40-year corporate citizen of the borough. You can see the building through that window right there. We're about 100 yards away, if that, and we're seeking a standby emergency generator. As a result of the application submitted, we have three variances. The first is there's a 15-foot setback required in the side yard. There's 9.7 feet existing due to the location of the building. The generator we're seeking to install is 7.5 feet by 2.8 feet, and it would be located within the setback. The accessory structure setback from a building should be 18 feet under the ordinance, and we're proposing 3 feet. The accessory structure from the lot line is supposed to be 15 feet under the ordinance, and we're proposing 3.7 feet, largely due to the configuration of the property. I have with me Mr. Dublair, who will testify about what we're looking to put in, and I hope to prove the positive and negative criteria for both C1 and arguably a C2 variance. If the board doesn't have any questions, I'd like to call Mr. Dublair.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record and provide your address. It can be a business address.
David Dublair, D-U-B-L-I-R-E-R, 680 Kindercamack Road, River Edge, New Jersey, 07661.
All right, thank you. And you're the principal of the applicant?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Dublair, I know you're the principal. Can you describe for the board what the applicant is, what does Tower do?
Tower Management Service LP is a real estate company. We own and manage residential apartment communities all the way up from Selkirk, New York, down through Orange County, New York, all the way through New Jersey, down near Point Pleasant Beach and Yardville, New Jersey, and all in between. We have approximately 30 different residential properties.
Approximately how many units do you oversee in New Jersey?
Probably about 2,000 or so.
Okay. And as a result of that operation, what are your hours of operation?
Our normal business hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but because we have residential people living in all our communities, we are actually 24/7, 365. So people have problems at night, various maintenance issues, if we have fires, natural disasters, anything like that, we have to respond. We can't just call you back the next day. So we have to maintain full communication and access to all our properties and our records. As an example, we had a fire 3 years ago in Crestwood Apartments in Middletown, New York, in the middle of an ice storm. We had to evacuate an entire building. I needed to access our records for the fire department so we could do a grouping of who was in the building, so we could identify everybody so that we made sure we evacuated it. That's just one example of having access to our.
And those records are all kept here?
We keep the records on property level number 1, on servers number 2, and on the cloud number 3. We always have 3 different backup systems, just in case, because again, we're responsible for people's personal, property and their lives.
Okay. And just by way of background, you're also familiar with land use development and construction, correct?
Yes.
All right, and just give the board the benefit of how you're familiar with that.
In approximately 35 years, I've constructed 2 residential apartment communities. I've done numerous 7- and 8-figure rehabs of residential communities. I've also built single-family homes as well. I'm familiar with all aspects of construction, whether it be residential or commercial.
Okay, and you have had your surveyor prepare a plot plan for what you're proposing here this evening, correct?
Yes, we utilize D.W. Smith. It's a regional firm down in South Jersey, and they've done work for Tower for over 20 years.
Okay, and you gave them the details of the proposed generator and had them lay out where it needs to be installed?
Yes.
How did you come to decide where it needs to be installed?
Based upon the configuration of our property, it is a tight piece of land. We have the yeshiva as our neighbors on the right, and we have Chase Bank on the left. If you go down our driveway, to the right again is yeshiva, to the left is, I believe, 3 different residential homes. Based upon topography, location of our gas service and our electrical service, the best place, that it would fit, be accessible, would be on the side of the building where there are no open windows. They're all solids. So we don't have to, and we have solid brick veneer. So from a fire standpoint, we don't have any concerns there. So that was how we determined where we were going to put the generator.
Okay, and I'm going to show you what's been submitted as part of our application, which is the D.W. Smith engineering survey with the revision date of, it's dated November 25th, 2019, but you had them mark in the approximate location,
Yes.
correct? And does this survey accurately depict the conditions on the property in terms of the improvements and the unimproved portions of the property?
Yes.
Is it fair to say the property is largely improved?
Yes.
Okay, and you described how you chose that particular area. Is there any, before we jump into that, why do you need a generator?
Again, as I explained earlier, last few years, there's been a fair amount of power failures. I guess there was one 2 years ago. We were down for over 2 weeks. Climate change, all of that. bad winters, we've lost power and we can't operate. And it's a hardship for us. So we want to be able to service our clientele.
Okay, and in terms of this particular location on the site, is there any other spot on the site that's suitable for installing the generator?
You really don't have a lot of choice because you don't want to really put it in the middle of a parking lot or the side. On the right, I'm pretty close to the yeshiva school,
So you're referring to the right-hand side of the property going down?
going down the driveway, correct.
And approximately how much room do you have there between driveway and building?
A couple feet.
Okay.
It's tight.
All right.
We picked the site on the left because it is a commercial establishment, Chase Bank. And we thought that would also be minimal disruption to the community, considering they're 9 to 5, and I believe their hours on Saturdays are 9 to 1.
Okay, and the rear, obviously, you have to have a generator close to the building. Is the rear entirely paved?
Yes,
And you have cars going in and out of there?
correct.
Okay, so that's not ideal either. Let's talk about the front lot, front of the lot. Can you locate it in the front yard?
It would be difficult. You have a large brick paver entrance. You have 2 different sets of steps, one for the driveway, one for the sidewalk area. So it really wouldn't be that advantageous to have it out there.
In addition, you have landscaping.
We have some landscaping, we have some exterior lighting for the pathways. We try to, and we have a small sign out front as well.
Okay, so that's not ideal either.
Correct.
And it's also putting a generator right in view of everybody on Kinnicamack, correct?
Exactly.
Okay,
At
and
least,
you considered that in terms of your thought process?
as far as being a good neighbor to the community, we thought it would be more advantageous to keep it on the side and, do whatever screening would be asked upon us to hide it.
Okay, and can you describe the type of generator you're proposing?
We're using a Kohler. The model is a 60R CLA. That is a larger style generator. It's much bigger per se than what you would see at a homeowner's house, more like a Generac. This generator would power our entire building, both HVAC, we have sewage pumps as well, and heating systems. The advantage of Kohler is it's a higher end unit. The unit we've chosen is an 8-cylinder, which means it's going to run much, much quieter.
Okay, and the approximate size depicted on the plan is 7.5 feet by 2.8 feet. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct.
Okay. And then I shared with you Mr. Costa's report, and he points out the decibels in terms of the sound levels as per the specs that we've submitted as part of this application are at 57 decibels during the weekly engine exercise and 61 during normal operation. You're familiar with that, having installed other generators on other sites, is that
Correct.
Okay, can you share for the board approximately what does the sound of 57 to 61 decibels?
If I
equate to?
talk like this, that's probably 73 decibels. If you run a motorcycle or a lawnmower, you're probably pushing 90 to 100. If you whisper, approximately 30 decibels. As a point of reference, I'm not a sound engineer, but
I was just going to say, Counselor, if he's going to testify as to what the sound actually sounds like, and he's not a sound professional, I would suggest we move on from that testimony.
Okay.
the specifications are presented in the
We
specs.
get it.
I understand.
But
No, I understand.
But he does have familiarity with it, having installed others. But that said, we have a range approximate. Now, that said, in terms of the weekly testing, what does that entail and how long does it go on?
The generator can be set to exercise whenever we'd like. We would take the recommendation of the community or the town, and whatever they chose for us as far as hours to exercise, we'd be open to that.
And how long does the exercise period last?
Typically 10 minutes.
Okay, so this is the same kick-on that you see with the residential Generacs that go on periodically during the course of a month?
Correct.
Okay. And it, obviously, when it's operating during an emergency, let's clarify. You're only looking for this as a backup, correct? You're not going
Correct.
to run your building on this?
Correct.
And during an emergency, it runs at the 61 decibel level?
Correct.
Okay. And you chose the Kohler because it's less intrusive, less noisy than the Generac? Is that accurate?
It's just a better generator. Had both installed. Kohler has a much better reputation. I've heard of some cases of Generacs having complete failures and/or some fire issues. I stay with Kohler.
Okay.
Just a personal preference.
And assuming that there is a power outage, you only operate really on site Monday to Friday, correct?
Correct.
All right. In a rare occasion, you're there on a Saturday?
I am there on some Saturdays.
Okay. But you saw the condition in the denial letter that you wouldn't be operating the generator on Saturday, Sunday.
We wouldn't operate, let's say, on a Saturday or Sunday, but in the instance of if it was the dead of winter, we would seek permission to run the generator to heat our building, so, we wouldn't experience damages. That would be, an exception to it.
But that's the only time you would be.
Yeah,
seeing-
otherwise, during the summer months when we're operational, we would need the power. No one's coming in at night or weekends. I'm there a lot on weekends, but.
Okay. And just in terms of your building, you're the main tenant, correct?
The building is approximately 7,500 square feet. We occupy almost all of it. There's one small space on the first floor where there's an executive that rents one small office. And he lives up the street. He's a resident, and he's probably there 3 or 4 times a month.
Okay. And how many employees do you have?
In our corporate office across the street, it could be anywhere between 12 to 14.
Okay. And your hours of operation are 9 to 5?
Typically 9 to 5.
Okay. So to the, I guess, the northerly side of you, that's the bank parking lot, correct?
Correct, Chase Bank.
All right. And your hours pretty much mirror what their working hours are?
We're pretty close to them. We'll probably sometimes be a little after 5 p.m. They lock their doors, but, they still sort of there till 5:30.
Do you know if they have a generator?
I have seen they don't have a permanent generator.
So during power outages, they bring in standbys?
I've seen them bring in a trailer with enough power to operate the bank. Much, much bigger than what we're proposing.
Okay. And in terms of Mr. Costa's concerns, he recommends that there be screening provided, correct?
Yes,
Or, we haven't depicted that on the plan, but are you willing to do that?
yes.
And what is the reason we didn't have it on the plan?
Because we wanted to give, the town the opportunity to tell us what they want.
Okay. So
We're
you're-
open to suggestions, whether it be fencing with green slats in it to camouflage it, large planting. We're open.
Or a combination thereof?
Anything that you want, I'm happy to do.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for Mr. Blaine.
Okay, I'm going to head to our professionals. Mr. Costa, do you have anything?
Mr. Chairman, obviously they have to meet the state code as far as the noise. So regardless of whatever we say or the town says, they still have to obviously meet that. Other than that, it's up to the board. And again, I think most of the thunder is probably going to be to the gentleman to my right because of the variances.
And he's who I'm going to recognize next. Mr. Behrens?
Right, so I just had one question for you, Mr. DeBlair. So I was following you, I understand the regular exercising of generators, but you mentioned using it during the winter to power the building, or can you reiterate?
Well, we've had power failures during the winter months.
Right.
So it's a blizzard outside. It's 20 below. I wouldn't want the building to have no heat in it for an extended period of time because all my pipes would blow up.
Right, so only in an emergency situation, inclement weather, not throughout the winter, I guess was my point.
No.
As an energy alternative.
As in, no, we're not interested in doing that. It's again to protect the building in severe winter conditions.
And we're certainly willing to notify the building department of that kind of a situation. I'm sure they would know about it if everybody else is out, but that would be a condition of approval that in the event we're going to be open during the winter, that we just give notice.
I'm gonna guess if there's a power failure on Kennecott Road, the building department probably know about it.
That was the one question that I had. The borough does not specifically regulate generators, so.
Tom, bring that mic to you, please.
The borough does not specifically regulate generators, so it defaults to the borough's accessory structure requirements in a non-residential zone, which this is in, and it requires a 15-foot, minimum 15-foot setback in the rear yard. Being proposed is 3.75 feet because of the current layout of the building. And there's a separate provision that requires an 18-foot setback of an accessory structure from the principal building, and, I think it's a foot or two from the building as proposed. And I believe we've heard testimony from the applicant that there's a hardship in, the current layout of the property, as well as the location of the existing utilities, and that there's a possible public benefit of locating the generator away from the residential properties in the rear. The one condition that I wanted to see happen was that it be screened suitably. There may be some building code issues with, so I think as a condition, we might have to work with the construction official, because I know there's exhaust that emits from generators, so just to make sure that whatever the solution is code compliant, which our recommendation would be that it's either a solid fence or landscaping, or both. And I'm sure that you'd be
Which
willing to comply.
we're agreeable
Right.
to either one.
Right. And the other was that it be exercised during regular business hours, subject to the board's.
Whatever screening they put in, they're gonna have to have proper ventilation, otherwise you're gonna have a problem there.
Exactly.
So you just work with the building department on figuring out the proper screening for that.
Whatever's.
I'm sure there's some sort of recommendations out there by now.
Just one question. What is it, a 60 KVA?
So
It's not over 100, right?
No,
No.
no.
It's under, I think.
60
it's
KW.
100, 115.
Yeah, we're
You need
going-
an air-
we're
You don't
going
need an
s-
air permit then.
No, we're going 60 KW.
I used to know these things by memory, but I'm getting older, so I don't remember as
Yeah,
much.
we needed to go up because we have three-phase on the
Okay.
HVAC.
Natural gas, though.
Absolutely, and we've already received approval from PSE&G. We have enough.
Did you ever read the fine print?
Sure.
I'm just saying, okay.
Tommy, you done?
In
That's it, thank you.
conclusion, you've heard the applicant's testimony, so it's up to the board whether or not they've satisfied the test, whether or not there's a hardship presented and/or public benefits. If there are any detriments, I would suggest that they're limited to really the noise, any noise emitted. We've gotten testimony about the decibels emitted during regular exercising and use, so that's all I have for now.
In terms of the exercising of it, we're amenable to whatever the board recommends, whether it's a Saturday, that it be scheduled for that, or 9 to 5 during the week is fine with the applicant. Whatever is least intrusive to the town.
So as we go around, you guys can make suggestions on what timing you think for that 10-minute test run. I'll start with Ms. Boland.
No comments, but I believe our planner said he wanted it during the week.
Which is fine.
Is that right?
I think generally during regular business hours, Monday through Friday, between 9 and 5, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. makes the most sense.
Mine is Wednesday, 1 to 2. I'd be fine with that.
There you go.
Ryan?
No, no issues with it. Does seem like you've done what you can to be a good neighbor and putting in the spot that makes sense. Anytime during the week, during business hours is fine by me. I don't see any issue of him having to ask permission to turn it on if it's 0 degrees out in the winter that they need to keep the heat on. I don't know the person that would need to put that stipulation. If it's needed for the safety of the property, then I don't know that they'd need to ask for permission, but
Yep.
I have no issue with it.
Plus, just to add, we also have a sprinkler system in there, so you wouldn't want to have that freeze up as well.
Right.
Mr. Bastide?
No comment.
Mr. Esposito?
I'm okay.
Mr. Pfeffer?
I'm fine. I just have one quick question. You've been in that location for a long time.
Correct.
You never had a generator, backup generator in that, for that building before?
The attorney who used to rent the first floor from us, his name was Joseph Colella. He's a longtime resident of Wardell. He had a small temporary generator that he put out in the parking lot to run, his telephones and things like that. But we've never taken on, it's pretty costly operation, and we just decided now that, we really need to bite the bullet and do this.
Got it. Okay, no other questions.
Mr. Craig?
Just one question. There's a concrete pad in the rear of the building that's shown on the drawing. What is the purpose of the concrete pad back there?
I think that depicts that if you look to the left of it, there is a small handicap symbol. That's the handicap parking.
Okay, and that pad is the ramp?
No, it's not a pad. It's just that's the hash marks on the pavement itself.
No.
Oh, he's
In
referring
front
to
of
the
that.
marking here.
In front of that.
Oh.
It's on the
So that's a
perimeter of the
ramp up,
building.
is it?
Oh, yeah, that's a ramp. It says concrete pad. That's so if somebody had to get into our building with a wheelchair.
Okay, so that's
They'd
the,
have
that's the
accessibility.
ADA ramp.
And that's why we have the parking space right next to it.
Got it, okay, so, all right, 'cause I didn't understand, because it looked like you could have put it
Yeah,
there, but
I
it's.
agree. It's a
yeah.
little
And I
confusing.
guess the other question, I know you'd said, obviously you wanted to put it on the side to keep it out of public view, but on the left side of the building, as you're looking at this drawing, where the column light is called out as a typical, you've got about 22 feet from the property line to where the pavers begin. Any possibility that putting it there and screening it, would avoid needing the variances and the setbacks, or
No.
is there an issue with putting it there?
As we testified earlier, we didn't want the entire world traversing Kindercamack Road to be staring at this. It's just, we want to be a good neighbor, that's why we sort of put it towards the back area so no one can really see it. And again, staying near the commercial area.
And if I could follow up to the question, are there windows in the front that are not located on the side?
You have the entrance to our office, there's a door there, so
Okay,
that would
so
be.
if you're running it, you're gonna have, okay.
And we like to think we keep the building aesthetically neat and clean for the community as well.
Okay. I'm good.
No questions. I might suggest we just have the fire department take a look at this, make sure that there are no issues, just given the position, how close it is to the building. I know there was testimony that, there are no windows and it's a fireproof location, but just as long as they're comfortable with it.
We're keeping it 3 feet off of the solid brick,
Okay.
which is within the manufacturer's recommendations. But we'd
Okay.
be happy if the fire department wanted to review it.
Thanks.
We'd welcome it.
Okay.
I'll instruct the clerk to notify the fire department just to review the plans and make sure they're okay. If there's any questions or anything, they can reach out to your attorney or go through our attorney to reach out to your attorney.
Yeah, we recently just had our fire inspection, and we had one emergency light out, and we repaired it.
Very good.
And I concur with the suggested times for testing, so.
Of course I have a comment. Regarding screening, the discussion was the applicant was going to work with the building department. I would suggest that Mr. Costa look at whatever you finally decide and comment and approve that.
We're happy to stipulate we'll provide landscape screening and fencing if recommended, so that we satisfy the borough engineer
That's,
Throw the town planner in there.
and the planners.
He's good with the landscaping, he likes that.
okay, that's it.
Mayor?
I'm good.
Just a couple questions real quick. You talked about you weren't going to run it when you didn't need it. So let's say it's Saturday night at midnight and it's 75 degrees outside and the power goes out. How do you control it that it doesn't go on?
That would be a question that I would have to check with our electrician. I don't have that exact answer.
Okay. So it could feasibly run when nobody's in the building over the night if we have a power outage, because I know how they work. Once the power is cut, they automatically turn
Right,
on.
it has a transfer switch. So that is, I'm sure I could overcome
So
that.
you'll find a way to monitor that, maybe hook.
Well,
may-
what
you-
would happen is-
Just a suggestion, I'm sure you have 24-hour monitoring on your security there, correct?
Correct.
Maybe run it through that, so security knows that if it's on at midnight because of a power outage at 74 degrees outside, they can remotely turn it off. Because I can turn mine on and off with my phone,
Yeah, we can.
but I have a Generac, not.
Yeah. Bowler has the same apps. We have a fire alarm system and a burglar alarm system, so when we get a power outage.
So you work with our planner on that?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything from the, okay, I'd like to entertain a motion open to the public. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Anybody in the public have any questions for this gentleman on his generator? Hearing none, I would offer we close to the public.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. At this point, if there's no other questions, I'm going to entertain a motion for approval on this application.
So moved.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Yeah, it's your job.
I'll make a motion that we grant approval of the variances required, and I wasn't quite sure of the stipulation on the timing. Restrictions for operation.
My notes
No,
show.
what they're gonna do is they're gonna figure out a way to hook it up to their monitoring system, so it's not running throughout the night.
One, you can include that in it.
Yes, so you want me to run through the conditions that I wrote?
Okay.
That the generator must meet the state code regarding noise. The applicant will work with the building department to install a solid fence or landscaping or both with approval from the borough engineer and board planner. The generator will be exercised during normal business hours, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The fire department will provide a review and comment, and the applicant will accept and work with the fire department to resolve any issues if they have any. And the applicant will work with the board planner to determine the monitoring of the generator.
Okay, fine. You picked up the other two I was gonna add.
All right, great.
If I could make a suggestion, if it is possible to have the remote like you have, Mr. Chairman, is that something you'll stipulate to?
I think we could do, I need to confirm that with our electrician.
Okay.
One thing that I would say though, let's say we're experiencing, some type of emergency during the summer, and I have to come to the office, I would expect that I'd be able to have the generator operational.
Of course, but my point was that it's not running through the night in an empty building at 3 o'clock in the morning, disturbing the residents down the block that may have power.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, where was I? I was entertaining a moment. Yep, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Cashlin? And I'll call for roll call, please.
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito,
Yes.
Mr. Bastide.
Yeah.
All right,
Good
the
luck.
motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you.
Nice, pleasure to meet you both. Okay, our next order of business is a continuation of 915 Kindercamack Road LLC, AKA Dunkin' Donuts.
And it might just take a minute because we have some recusal.
Well, I want to wait for that for a second, just before you leave on me.
Appreciate you, Bates. Take care.
So I'll call the people up for 915 Kindercamack Road. This is Block 206, Lot 4. Construction of a new Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through, where the bank used to be. Hi, Counselor. So if you remember correctly, at the, I believe it was the first or second meeting, the board had decided that because of the variants that are needed, that this would become a D1 variance. Are you in agreement with that, or do you wish to entertain or enter testimony tonight to object to that?
We have filed as part of our application, I believe, an A appeal of that determination. We would handle it in the due course of our planner's testimony that will be forthcoming at a later point in the proceedings. I have other witnesses that I intend to call before our planner.
So, that brings a bit of a conundrum.
The mayor and the councilman shouldn't.
They shouldn't be present. Okay. Mayor?
Thank you.
Enjoy your well-deserved night off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Caslin, thank you so much. Good to see you there. You get this the rest of the year. Okay. Yes. So I am going to ask Mr. Pfeffer, come on up. And you can switch out your nameplate with Mr. Caslin. I'm going to ask you to come next door to me here. And I'm going to ask Mr. Esposito to come up and take where Mr. Merriman was and bring your name tag.
And when the music stops, everybody sits in the closest chair.
Yeah.
We have no spot, too.
And we have one more chair, Mr. Canengo, so you can take Mr. Canengo's seat. Just bring your nameplate with you.
You want me here, is that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you look just like a guy who used to sit over there.
All right, just a little bit of
Do from this side.
housekeeping. Again, I'm going to look for a 10:30 curfew, but because we had to move another application in before you, I'm going to give you a little latitude. I'm not going to, if we're in the middle of testimony, I'm going to allow whoever's testifying at that point to finish.
Thanks.
So you're not having to call them back again. Is that fair?
Appreciate your courtesies. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
And just members of the audience, after each person has their opportunity to testify, we will open up to the public to give you guys an opportunity to question that particular person on just their testimony. At the end of this application, of course, you'll be able to, probably not tonight, but you'll be able to ask any questions you want on the application. But tonight, we'll be focused on just the people that are testifying and to what they're testifying, if you have any questions. And I'll get to you as soon as I'm done getting to the board. Continue.
Thank you. Good evening. Andy Del Vecchio, member of the firm of BD Padavano. On behalf of the applicant this evening, I'd like to start with a couple of housekeeping items, if we may. We were asked to renotice for these proceedings, which we have in fact done. We've supplied a new affidavit of notice. And I would like to start by marking that as 8/21, I believe, is where we left off.
There was an exhibit 820 at the last hearing?
820 was the updated landscaping plan that was prepared by L2A.
Okay. So exhibit 821.
And I have several others that I'd like to mark just to make the testimony flow a little smoother. A22 will be the L2A prepared site plan drawings consisting of 15 sheets bearing a last revision date of 6/28/22. A23, the L2A prepared minor subdivision plan consisting of one sheet bearing a last revision date of 6/28/22. A24 is the L2A prepared soil movement plan consisting of one sheet, last revised 6/28/22. A25 is the updated traffic report prepared by Dolan and Dean, dated June 24, 22. And last is the A26 letter prepared by L2A, providing a summary of plan changes from the last set of drawings that were before you, also dated June 28, 22.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. When we last appeared, I believe it was back on May 25, we left off, I guess, with a number of questions concerning the proposed music studio or school proposed for a portion of the bank building. I understood the board to be seeking some additional information about the user, what it was, how it would operate. I have brought a representative of the proposed tenant with me this evening. The name of the music school or studio is known as Rock to Bach, and I do have the proposed operator or owners that will testify. If you would please come forward.
Hello,
Good evening.
good evening.
Could you
Do I sit?
state, yeah, you can sit. Can you
Okay.
state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Lorena Evans, Evans.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
All right, and please state your business address for the record, please.
915 Kindercomack Road.
And you are the music studio operator?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You are proposing to operate the franchise known as Rock to Bach in a portion of the building that is currently known as the bank building on the property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us what Rock to Bach is, what it does, and how it does it?
So Back to Rock, it's a franchise music school for kids. And it operates over 60 locations in the United States. We are going to be teaching kids how to play an instrument and also play with as a team together.
And it's generally either individual or group instructions in various rooms within the building?
Correct.
And when we talk about a music school and studio, we're not talking about a venue where there's large scale performances of any kind, are there?
Correct.
And as part of your standard operating practice, are there any precautions taken relative to sound from the building?
Yes, in fact, the facility will be built, every room will have soundproofing. And we go through major and great extent to soundproofing not only the sound, but for vibration. The metal in between the metal studs, we're going to have special insulation to mitigate sound and vibration with 2 layers of quiet rock drywall insulation. In addition to that, we're going to soundproof the surrounding walls from front to back. The dry rock wall is going to be from the floor all the way to the top.
When you say the top, you mean the underside of the roof, correct?
Correct, right below the roof. Mhm.
And that is done because you are obviously have multiple rooms where multiple music lessons may be happening, and they can't interfere with each other.
Correct. We wouldn't be able to teach a child in this room if we're teaching another child a different instrument in this room.
There is a proposed stage for the interior fit-out of this space, correct?
Correct.
And that stage, is that intended for large school performances like, I like to use a school play or a school musical? Is that the type of activity that's proposed to take place, or something more intimate?
It's going to definitely be more intimate. It's where the children that are learning the instrument are eventually going to perform, to get used to performing under lights, on a stage, together.
And that's typically a maximum of 5 students?
Yes.
So we're not talking about a entire class or the entire school coming together. We're talking about groups of 5 kids at a time who may perform together to understand the experience of playing as a group.
Correct.
When does your primary business take place during the course of a day or a particular week?
We're going to be closing Sundays and Mondays, and it's going to be mostly, the hours are going to be between 2 in the afternoon and about 7 p.m. On Saturdays from 10 a.m. until about 4.
And do you have any current locations other than the one that's proposed here?
No.
And you've made yourself familiar with the business practices and the primary hours of operation in order to provide this testimony this evening?
Absolutely, yes. We're very excited.
And approximately how many instructors would you envision having at any given time on the site?
So in the beginning, it's going to be less. It's going to be about 3 instructors. And as the business builds, we're hoping to have maybe 6 at one time, 6 to 7, 8.
Thank you. I have no further questions. I make her available for the board and the board professionals' questions.
Mr. Costa?
I have no questions.
I have no questions pertaining to the issue of the use. The ordinance permits music studios in the C1 zone. You've heard the testimony from the applicant about the nature of the use. It would be my opinion that I believe it fits within that definition. You could look at it 2 ways. One, you could look at it strictly as is it a music recording studio, or is it a music studio akin to a dance studio, which allows for instruction? So I would leave that to the board to consider, but again, I think it fits within that definition.
Colin?
Yeah, a quick question. So what would your aspirations be to grow the music studio as far as students and instructors? Like, where would you see this going? Are you looking to cap it at the numbers that there are today? Or could you envision, 20% growth over 5 years type thing? Or how do you think about that?
So the reason my husband and I decided to do this is because we have a child. She's 10 years old, and she started to attend the competition, which is School of Rock, which I'm sure most of you have heard. And it built her confidence level, and that's what we want to bring to the children of the community. In the beginning, it's going to be about, I would say, instructors about 4 to 5, and then eventually to have, and I'm just trying to remember what I saw in School of Rock and the statistics that Back to Rock gave us. It will be to build, it probably grows about 5 to 10% a year, but it's rotating. The kids come and go. We teach from ages 5 to 17, and usually once they're after their age, they're gone.
So I guess, though, do you envision, though, like that, you're going to start with, 4 or 5 teachers, 6 or 7 students, and then grow it to double that or something?
That's the goal, yes.
Okay. So over time, we will see more students participating in these events?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Is that it, Colin?
Yeah.
No questions.
Ryan?
Just a question about the turnover. So I assume these lessons are half hour, an hour, something along those lines?
You can go from half an hour to an hour.
Okay. So if we have, and then that instructor, I would imagine, would just be working from 2 to 7, and you wouldn't really have a turnover with the instructors, right? Your guitar teacher is just staying there for all those kids?
Correct.
Okay. Just getting an idea of how many people will be coming in and out during that time. So in a given day, if you have 5 or 6 kids, then you might be having 20 or 30 people coming through in a day. Ballpark.
So I can tell you that per hour, it's about 16 in 1 hour in the building, including instructors and staff.
I don't think I had any other questions on the use of it.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah, and just to be clear on that, so if you had 8 instructors and you have 8 students roughly, and you're taking a half hour to an hour lesson, so you're gonna be cycling through 7 or 8 students per hour, could be more, it could be a dozen, because some are taking half-hour lessons, some are taking an hour. So you may have, a dozen students per hour coming through. Is that about right?
So that would be like the ultimate,
Right.
Revenue coming in, right? That would be
Yeah,
like.
that's success, right?
In a perfect, successful school.
Okay.
But 16 per hour, including staff.
Right, okay. And, the instruments, obviously pianos, woodwinds, are there electrified, amplified instruments, guitars, bass guitars, things like that, or is it gonna be more, classical guitar, folk guitars, non-amplified?
So it will be a combination. The main instruments will be guitar, keys, electric guitar, violin.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pfeffer?
No questions.
Mr. Esposito?
Nothing.
Under normal operations, are there any deliveries?
No.
Okay. See?
So your testimony is that you're going to have, basically the building's going to be soundproofed, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So the chance of any leakage coming outside, and although I'm sure it'll be very pleasant noise coming out, that the neighbors won't be affected by this at all? Is that your testimony?
Correct.
Okay. I have nothing. I'd like to entertain a motion to open to the public.
So moved?
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, so first row, sir? Did you have a question?
I'm the board's traffic engineer.
Oh,
It's okay.
did you want to weigh in here?
Some of the questions were about the number of people, so you're saying approximately 16 people at any one time.
My apologies, I didn't realize. Okay.
No problem.
I'll remember that in the future, though. Anybody else have any questions? Tom?
Yes, sir. Ms. Evans, will there be any?
Tom, stand up, please.
Yes, sir.
Name, the whole thing.
Thomas Barrett. I represent Five Flowers, the adjoining property owner.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be any retail sales conducted on the premises?
T-shirts and water bottles.
No instruments?
No.
And will it be one-on-one instruction, or will there be multiple students with one instructor?
One-on-one is mostly, but we could have 2 students per instructor.
Okay. And then, do you have any plans on opening the facility to private parties?
No,
So there won't be any private parties?
no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to ask any questions? Take a motion to close to the public?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No abstentions.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Thank you. Good luck.
At this point, Mr. Chairman, as you've heard from the exhibit marking that preceded our first witness, there have been some significant changes made to our plans. I'd like to, at this point, recall our project engineer, Mr. Voigt.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, if I can, maybe through the attorney, can I, just one question on just the previous witness?
Sure.
You can't play the accordion, though.
No. Here's my question. Obviously, the building exists, it's vacant. They want a tenant in. Is this tied to this application?
At this point, yes, because it's only for a portion of the building. The balance of the building is proposed to be used for bank.
If the board, it's all one application. It's an existing building. This is a potential tenant to go into the existing building. Not that I think this could happen, but I see Mr. Barrett in the front row. More than likely, he's going to file an action, depending on the action of the board, or vice versa, this gentleman will. Is your tenancy based on that? You understand what I'm saying?
I'm gonna go to Marina on
What
this.
what's the
If she
question?
needs a variance, and it's tied to this entire application, you understand what I'm saying?
I think I do, but
Let me tell you what I'm
our
saying. I'll make it
position
very
is-
simple. If this board approves this application, and this gentleman files something, it's 3 years from now before anything happens. If you lose, I'm sure you're gonna file an action, and it's 3 years before something happens. If this young lady wants to open up her business, and it's tied to this application, chances are, she's not opening her business. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I could be right, I could be wrong.
The application is for a variance for the music, well, there would not be a need for a variance for a music studio use in this zone. So if the application didn't go through, then the potential tenant would not be able to occupy because everything is tied into one.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I agree with that. If the application, let's say this application went away for whatever purpose, the music tenant, the music use is a permitted use at that location. It's an existing building. It would be my opinion they could walk into the building department, secure permits, and operate.
For the entire
the
existing
entire
bank
building.
building, yes, but
Correct.
not for just this half that we're
Correct.
having this application for.
If in fact we're going to divide the building, I would take it one step further. If we were to divide the building and both uses are permitted, it is no different than having two tenants in a shopping center operate simultaneously, as long as they are permitted uses and there's no physical changes to the property.
So I'm just gonna jump in just for 1 second. When this property was approved, whenever, to be a bank, I believe there were variances included. Is that correct?
I
The
think
original application? So,
I can't
once you
say
make a
that-
change, I would imagine, and I'm not a land use expert, but the person to the left of me is, I would imagine that grandfathered use would go away, and it would become a brand-new application.
I would disagree.
This is going off a bit on a tangent
Right.
since none of this is all hypothetical right now.
Right.
I don't think it's not really necessary to comment on that.
Okay. Okay,
I
so,
think the intent, Mr. Costa, is this woman can open her business because she needs no variances to open her business.
Yeah.
They
right,
put up a wall in the middle of the bank. There's no variance needed for her to run a music studio.
but I guess the question I had is if this application is, if the subdivision is approved, does the grandfathered use of the bank go away because you've decreased the size of the property that was originally approved?
I don't think it's that simple of an analysis. You have to look at whether or not the subdivision causes an intensification of the non-conforming condition. I don't believe there are any non-conforming conditions with the existing bank, except for the front yard setback, which is deficient by, call it roughly 13 feet and change. That applies to the structure, not to the use, and the subdivision does not intensify that condition. So I would, as I would analyze your question, I think that the tenant could operate with or without the subdivision. The real question is, what happens with the rest of the building? And I think as long as it remains a bank and there are no historical conditions that would tie it down as anything but that, I think the bank could operate as well as long as there were not physical changes. But again, somewhat hypothetical until you actually have actual users and real facts to work with.
Right, okay. Doug, continue.
Okay, I don't want to steal Bill's thunder, but I'm going to give him a little wind-up before I let him loose. If you recall, the last time we were here, we also ended with significant discussion from your engineer expressing concern about the layout or the single entrance exit configuration for the proposed Dunkin' Donuts. We had some reservations about how the county might react to reinstating a 2 curb cut configuration, and through the assistance of your engineer, we were able to persuade the county to allow a dual curb cut configuration, essentially an entrance and exit point, and which allowed us to make other changes to the site. Those changes you're about to hear about from our engineer. You're also going to hear some concessions we were able to incorporate regarding signage and hours of operation, but Bill was previously sworn, he was qualified. I remind him he remains under oath. One final question, Bill, before I let you go. There were a number of plans and documents that I marked as exhibits prior to your testimony this evening. They were prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes, they were.
And can you tell us what the new plan shows us?
Sure.
We can mark it as the colorized version and just delineate it by sheet, if you will.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. This is drawing C-03, it's a site plan. It has the same date as the plans that were submitted in 44, dated June 28th of 22. The only thing different from this plan and the plan that's in the set is that we superimposed the proposed landscaping and we added color just for testing.
We marked it as 827,
Okay, and could you just repeat the sheet?
CO3.
Okay, thank you.
So, after our last hearing, we worked with Mr. Costa's office and Mr. Klein's office. We reached out to Bergen County. We spoke with Eric Timzak, who's one of the lead planners at the county. We discussed some of the issues that came up in our initial hearing. Some of them were, I'm just going to briefly read them. The traffic flow through the Dunkin' Donuts site was a little tight. The handicap space was blocked in by the incoming traffic.
I'm sorry, you want to just take the microphone and put it over by you to make sure we're picking everything up? It might get caught under that chair, just be careful. There you go. Better? There you go.
Sure. So the, under the existing condition, under the last hearing we came in, some of the comments were that the circulation through the site was a little confined. The handicap space potentially could have been blocked. That's up against the main entry of the building. Potential chances of traffic queuing out onto Kinderkamack Road. We had the ability of 13 cars to queue in the site before that the ingress and egress driveway would potentially be blocked. And the third would be pedestrians traversing across the single driveway to get to the walk-up window. So what we did is we prepared a drawing. We floated it by Bergen County. They agreed that it was acceptable. And what we did is we essentially left the initial driveway, which was a two-way in and out on the western side of the property, turned it into a single egress driveway, and then prepared a single ingress driveway closer to the eastern side of the property. That allowed us a larger driveway to come into the site. We have a 20-foot wide driveway. It brings us to a dual queue for the drive-through order position. It also allows for circulation or a bypass lane around the double stacking to circulate not only around the building to the exit driveway, but to also access all of the perimeter parking spaces on the property. So we eliminated that
handicap stall that was up against the building. We relocated it out to the perimeter of the site. You can see that we reoriented the parking along the eastern side of the property to a 90-degree parking configuration, where we did have a 60-degree angled parking. So it's a better parking configuration. It's more comfortable for people to pull into the 90-degree spaces. They have ample room to both pull in and back out, especially with the queue lines that are behind them. They have a 24-foot wide driveway, essentially, for a one-way circulation behind the parking spaces. In addition to that, we were able to address the concerns with the walk-up window. With the two driveways, we created basically a large open area, open space at the front of the building that's well landscaped. It's protected from both the incoming and outcoming traffic. And we prepared an outdoor seating area as well. And that was another point that was brought up by both some board members and your professionals. So we enhanced the safety of the pedestrians coming to the site. We prepared a access point to the right-of-way of Kinderkmack, so pedestrians can access safely from the sidewalk into the property and access both interior or exterior of the site. We provided bike racks and tables in the outdoor area. The bank and music school side portion of the property did not change very much. The only thing we did is we just reconfigured the egress or bypass lane slightly to accommodate the existing canopy that goes over the dual drive-through that's there. There are support columns that come down. I know that was a question from Mr. Costa's office. So we left the concrete island in there to protect that, and we adjusted just the egress aisle leaving the property. With this design, we were able to enhance the landscaping. I did present a exhibit at the last hearing. It was just a red line. What you see on here mimics that red line exhibit that we prepared at our last hearing. I did get some comments from the Shade Tree Commission. I've reached out to them. I'm more than happy to work with them. So is the applicant. I think we can come to agreements on many, if not all, of their comments and address some of the replacement species with the trees and possibly put some additional screening on the property. There's ample room to the rear of the property. I'm going to call it the northeast section behind the proposed retaining wall. We have pockets of open area between the existing trees where we can infill with more shade trees with larger canopies in that area. So I think the point of the Shade Tree Commission's letter was to really get that one-to-one match of I'm removing potentially 25 trees. We'd like to put back 25 trees. I can put some within the interior of the property, but it is a little confining, some of these landscape spots, but I do have ample room to the rear of the property, and I think I can get to that one-to-one accommodation. We did work on the ADA spaces for the music and bank lot. The ADA spaces are located on the eastern side of the property. Access is through the front door for both the music school and the bank. So what we're proposing is a proposed sidewalk along the landscaped island, which would then traverse the entrance driveway with a crosswalk, which would bring pedestrians safely into the building. It's also the closest position for ADA access to the site. Other than that, for the drive-through, like I said, originally, we had only room for 13 cars to queue. With this double configuration and the dual driveways, we have 16 positions currently. Potentially, I could get 17 and still have an open access still to the site. So the 17th car would be on the western position closest to the building, and I'd still have access into the site. So you'll hear more from our traffic engineer as far as the traffic circulation and number of queuing, but just off the bat, we were able to produce 3, potentially 4 more queuing positions with this revised layout. Some of the other items, really just some cleanup items that are in Mr. Costa's letter and Mr. Klein's letter, and also the planner's letter. I don't have any issues with addressing any of those comments that are in their reports.
You would agree to comply with all the remaining comments in those reports?
I would, yes.
And you really wanted to hold this back, so I'm going to force it at you.
Go ahead.
You told the board that you would go and talk to folks about the monument sign on this site. Did you do that?
No, I did not. So as one of the other points from our first hearing was the monument sign. There was some negative feedback about the monument sign. We're proposing to remove that monument sign from the property. So the monument sign, we had it proposed at along the entry driveway to the Dunkin' Donuts site. We're going to agree to remove that monument sign. In addition, there were some concerns about the hours of operation for the Dunkin' Donuts. We initially had the hours of operation for the Dunkin' Donuts from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., and that was discussed at some length. And what we've decided to do is to revise the hours of operation for in-store hours from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., and then for the drive-through, it would be 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Other than that, I think that's about the extent of the changes to the site plan based on our initial hearing, the comments from your professionals, as well as the comments from the board members and members of the community.
Bill, we're going to go one more.
Okay.
I'm going to refer to the traffic control signs that are on one of your detail sheets that I will find.
Sure. The directional sign?
Yes.
Yeah, it's sheet C14.
My understanding is that all the directional signs have been revised to be just that, solely directional signs. There's no corporate or tenant identification signs on those traffic control signs anymore.
That's correct. That's correct. And some of the other signage came from Bergen County. We've also added those to the plan as well.
So at the present time, the signage on this building is a single, we'll call it corporate identity sign facing Kinderkamak Road.
Correct.
There is a walk-up window sign also facing Kinderkamak Road.
Correct.
Over the walk-up window. And there is a wall-mounted sign or building-mounted sign facing, I guess what you would be calling easterly.
Easterly side.
The menu boards that are proposed for the dual configuration are oriented so that the boards and their speakers face in which direction?
Vehicles that they're servicing, so it would be on an angle at more in the northerly direction, so to the plan right.
They are facing essentially away from the rear property line.
Correct. To the greatest extent possible. That's correct.
And I believe there was one comment in Mr. Costa's report that warrants, I guess, just underscoring. You were asked, I believe, in that comment to reduce the light heights in the parking lot from 20 feet to 15 feet.
Yes, I believe that actually showed up in your board planner's letter. We had a typo on the plans. Permitted height in the zone is, or in the borough is 20 feet. We had it at 15, but that was a typo. We did have several of the pole-mounted fixtures at 20 feet. I can lower them to 15. It's not an issue. I probably will just need a few more. That's all. I won't, when I lower the lights, I don't get as far as a throw pattern. So I may have some dark spots, so I may have to add some more. I can certainly keep them at the 20 feet and leave it as is. It is compliant, but I can accommodate to the 15 feet. I may just need a few more. All of the light fixtures are at 3,000 Kelvin. So I'm even below the 3,500 that the planner's report suggested. So they're all at 3,000.
Are they dimmable? the
Yes,
lights?
they're all LED fixtures. They all have the capability of being dimmed. And I think we did speak about looking back at the lights after they're installed, possibly 6 months after installation. And if for some unforeseen reason, we could dim them if it becomes an issue.
Bill, so other than what we've talked about, the plans can be revised or will be revised to fully comply with the last set of comments we received. The shade tree comments are open, but you believe, subject to them responding to your last inquiry, we can also address all of the shade tree comments and landscaping as requested or detailed in their last letter. And that interaction just happened over the last couple of days, which is why it's not been resolved. We just got that report, but we tried to jump right on it. We're just waiting for a response.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions for Mr. Boyd. I'm available to you and your professional for any additional questions you may have.
Okay. Are there any representatives from Shade Tree here tonight?
I don't think they can
No.
make it, no.
Okay. Mr. Costa?
Mr. Chairman, again, there was, obviously, we wrote reports, everything that the gentleman testified as far as the county. I had conversations with Eric Timsack from the county. Obviously, you met with the county. I was not privy to those meetings. But from my understanding, talking to Eric, this plan will be accepted by the county as far as the two driveways. And what that gives you is then the separation with the pedestrian walk-up window. So now you can buffer that out, you can fence that out, so people will be corralled in that area, not that they're walking into cars that are exiting or cars that are coming in. So I think as far as the safety aspect, and again, I don't want to take the thunder away from Lee Klein, but I think this works much, much better for that reason. Whether it works as far as queuing, whether it works for other reasons, we'll wait for the testimony. But as far as everything else, if they're going to comply with the letter as far as garbage pickup, lighting, which they talked about, landscaping, shade tree, so on and so forth, that would have to get into any resolution of approval.
Tom?
Just a few quick points of clarification, more for Mr. Delvecchio at this point. So just to be clear, there have been no architectural changes from the last submission, obviously, right?
No.
Okay.
The
And
rooftop mechanicals will continue to be screened. If we did remove a sign from those original plans, there was an extra Dunkin' sign that was removed.
Right, and the only signage change from the last iteration of plans is the removal of the freestanding sign, is that accurate?
Correct. And I believe the sanitizing, I like to say, of any tenant information on the traffic control signs.
Okay, thank you. I would suggest, depending on how the application goes, if it were to be approved, that the applicant resolve the landscaping issues as a condition with the Shade Tree Commission and whoever else. One area of concern that I think we still have to discuss is behind the Dunkin' Donuts on the slope, to make sure that that landscaping is enhanced with either fencing and/or landscaping. I think we talked about the bamboo being removed. So day one, there's got to be ample year-round screening, better or at least as good as exists today. So can you testify to what the applicant might be willing to concede in that area?
Sure. A lot of that, the rear of the property, it's just not been maintained properly. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done. There is some bamboo. I think we testified to that at last hearing. That's all going to be removed. There's some underbrush that's been growing pretty wild. That's all going to be cleared out. As many as the mature trees at the rear of the property that can be saved with the installation of that wall, they will be saved. If I have the potential to save any additional ones, I certainly will. But again, we will infill the areas, especially in the rear of the property, with shade trees. We can also put some fencing with screening capability at the top of the top of the wall. The wall did grow a little bit. It's it hovers around 10 feet in its highest spot, so it will be adequately protected for fall, and it will meet all building code specifications. So yes, we can accommodate fencing and the additional landscaping for screening purposes at the rear of the property.
To back up, just to clarify with respect to the retaining wall, the high point is on the southwest corner by the dumpster?
Correct.
Right, okay. And when you talk about fall protection, are we talking about a fence above the wall?
Yes, the wall will have to have probably it's a 42-inch minimum high railing or fence at the top of the wall. So the highest point, you're going to be back around by the dumpster. You're at just under 11 feet. You're at 10.7, so 10 foot 9 inches at the back of the dumpster. It grew a couple of inches. It was about 10 foot 3 at our last hearing. Because of the dual drive-through, I had to lower. The county has certain specifications for cars entering and exiting a facility. When I split the driveways away, I'm actually coming in at a lower point along Kinderkamak Road. So I didn't have the ability to ramp up to the site to lift the building's floor up. So I had to keep it at a very gentle slope coming into the property and out of the property. So it really carried through to the finished floor. And because I have the drive-through, I have certain distance requirements for the bordering that it carried through, and it resulted in about 6 inches on the left-hand side or the western side of the property. So it's really just in this back corner here.
Mr. Delvecchio, why don't you just grab this and put this over by you? This way we make sure everything you're saying is picked up. Thank you. Okay, Tom, is that it?
Not to harp on it, but depending on where you position the fence and the type of fence, it may increase the extent of variance relief if there's a separation with planting. What are you proposing? An open railing or what, in terms of fall protection?
It could be, as far as screening, we are screening we are screening that side. There is an existing arborvitae screening that's there currently. It's not.
The point I'm getting, you need a variance for the 10-foot high wall because we allow a maximum of 6 feet. If you add a fence directly on top of that, that increases the combined height. So the question is, depending on the location and the type of fence, you know, if you have it set back with planting in front, let's say, I don't think it would increase the height. But if it's right on top of the wall, that would impact the extent of variance relief. I'm not saying it's an issue, I'm just pointing it out.
I mean, the tightest portion to the property, I have 6 feet.
Right.
To the back of the wall, to the property line, on the western side of the property.
Okay.
I could certainly move that fence back and give you the landscaping up
Put the
along the
plantings
front.
in front,
It's not a problem.
Yeah, I think it
It's
would be
probably
preferable
easier.
to separate it, just so it's not a larger wall, I guess would be the comment.
That's completely fine. It'll probably work out a little bit better for me to put the fence back a few feet and then have the landscaping in front. To put the footings in for the fence, they tend to want to be a little back from the wall, so that will work out.
And just, again, for the record, when this comes to the building department, 42-inch high fence? Is that
I
what we're
believe that's the minimum for fall
talking? So a
protection.
compliant fence is what we're.
Correct.
Just, again, I just want to be clear
You're
what
gonna
we're
move the
talking
fence back.
Right, it'll be set back to allow for room for planting. That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay, fine.
The
I don't-
plantings in front of the fence, they're not going to be trees, though. I mean, it's going to be evergreen shrubs,
Yeah,
a screening shrub.
I
that's-
understand.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Please, Mr.
Let me
Costa.
help. If you come up Kindercamack Road from Main Street and you look to your left, you'll see apartment buildings. And there's walls. And there's trees on top of the walls.
Tiered,
They're tiered.
and they're planted.
And they're planted. That's all you have to do. That solves the issue, and then you buffer it out, and then behind there, let me give you the answer.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I can't put a shade tree right up against the back. Can't do that. I have plenty of room behind.
You actually
The
can,
area.
and that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
There was an engineer, he was much younger, but he put those trees right behind the wall, and they're still there today.
Okay.
And now I'm much older. They're right.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. We can look into it.
Just, that was a point of clarification, again, to move forward. Final comment, you have a pedestrian walkway from the sidewalk to the Dunkin' Donuts building. We recommended a similar pathway for pedestrians to the other building. Wondering if you've thought about that.
What we could do is, I did implement that new sidewalk from the ADA spaces on the bank side. I could just extend that sidewalk simply to Kindercamack and make the connection point.
I'll leave that to the board. The concern was having pedestrians, kids walking up the driveway and no other way to access the site. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We have Mr. Lee Klein of Traffic Consultants. Would you like to weigh in on this testimony?
Yes.
Mr. Klein is the borough's representative for traffic.
Do I need to be sworn in?
Yes, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record and some background on your qualifications.
My name is Lee, middle initial D as in Daniel, Klein, K-L-E-I-N. I'm principal of Klein Traffic Consulting, 156 Walker Road, West Orange, New Jersey. I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My license is current. I'm also a nationally certified professional traffic operations engineer, and that certification is also current. I provide professional traffic engineering and parking analysis services to boards, and to applicants, and I actually worked on, what was it? Is it Continental Avenue?
Continental Avenue.
Yeah, and the.
I'm not sure if people like that, though. so I
Okay,
don't
never
bring it
mind
up.
then. I didn't know that. All right, thanks.
Mr. Klein, you've testified before this board before,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Good enough.
So I just had some questions about the turning templates. Are you going to be presenting them?
I-
Or are we going to wait for the traffic engineer?
I can present them, sure.
Can you just identify what's going up, Charles?
This is Exhibit EX01. It's the passenger vehicle circulation plan. Again, it has the same date, revision 4, dated 6/28/22.
Is part of the set, Phil? or
No,
just-
it's not.
So let's mark, we need to identify and mark them separately if we can.
30?
The A28,
Is this similar to the one that's in our packet? We have one, vehicle turning plan. CO3A?
Yeah. Okay, hold on a second. Yes, okay, yes, I apologize. It is the same as CO3A, it just is, we added some more color to it, that's all.
We'll still mark it as Exhibit A28, please.
Sure. A28. Okay, so again, this, thank you for the correction, this mimics drawings C-3A. One of the requirements from Bergen County was to show a standard vehicle turning into the property at 2 feet off the curb line of Kinder Connect. So we mimic that circulation pattern both through circulating through the property as well as into the drive-through lane.
can you just remind us, delivery vehicles can in and out of the...
Sure.
sites?
As testified from the previous hearing, all of the deliveries are from essentially a Sprinter van. I do have another exhibit that shows the Sprinter van delivery. It's EX02.
Can you mark that as A29?
A29 is EX02, it's Sprinter van circulation plan. Again, it has revision 4 dated 6/28/22. The Sprinter van, it's we're showing it at 24 feet in length. The van does circulate through the property. You can see in the red diagram for the wheel path, it will circulate through the 24-foot drive aisle as well as the 12-foot bypass lane and exit the site. There is no loading space designated on the property. The van will park in one of the head-in parking spaces along the east side of the property on off hours for the deliveries. That's all I have on circulation.
Mr. Klein, anything else?
No, not for this witness.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the board for questions, and we will start with our newest member.
Okay, thank you. So maybe just a clarifying question. So you'd mentioned that you're removing all the monument signs, is that correct?
There was one monument sign at the entrance driveway that we proposed. That was we're going to take that away. So
Okay,
it's
so-
one sign.
Okay, in the diagram, I think there's two, right? So you're just going to remove the one, and which one are you removing?
There's only one.
I thought I was.
Is one a directional sign, perhaps?
I saw the two on the corners. I want to bust this out.
I think it's just the one right to the left of the
Yes,
entrance.
on the.
And there's not one over on the
It's
other
on
side?
I don't
on
see
the ingress driveway,
Okay,
where the drive-through is, there's a monument sign. So if you go to CO3,
okay,
there's a monument sign on the left-hand side. That will be removed.
okay.
The sign I think you were referring to was on the egress driveway. That's just a directional sign. It's one of the Dunkin' Donuts brand signs for see you soon.
Okay, got it. And then I guess this is more of an observation. So I think it's a great idea, like splitting, putting an ingress and an egress in there. But an observation would be, there's a lot going on there with coming into and I don't know if this is out of bounds with the traffic or not, but, there's a lot going on with the bus stop there, people coming out of the bank and the music school, trying to get into the Dunkin' Donuts, and, there's a bus stop there, I think I said that. So there's a lot of activity going on in that very condensed area. Are cars going to be able to make a left-hand turn into, if I'm going north on Kinderkamack, will I be able to make a left-hand turn in there?
Currently, there's no restrictions to any of these driveways, so yes, you would be able to.
Okay. So you can have people making left-hand turns, cars queuing up, cars trying to come out of the bank, and a bus pulling up, trying to get people on it. It's a perfect storm, right? But that could happen.
What I can tell you is that the county has not implemented any restrictions on any of the driveways.
Okay. Okay, I think it's more of an observation that, a lot of activity going on there in a short span of space.
The county did have us relocate the bus stop approximately 20 feet from its original position. So we did relocate. The bus stop was closer to the intersection of, and I apologize, the street across is Bloomfield Avenue. The county is having us relocate the bus stop approximately 20 feet to the east of that position. So it's farther away from that alignment with Bloomfield Avenue. So, and that, it works out well. It's pretty much in the center between the two driveways, the out from the bank and the in from the Dunkin'.
Okay, understood. That's it. No more comments from me.
Is your intention to have your traffic expert testify this evening? Or, okay. Let's go quick, Ms. Bold.
So I believe you originally said that there would be no brand signs, and now you said that the brand signs. So see you later, see you soon, and welcome back. Those are not being proposed, right? I know they're on the plan. But they're not really directional signs. There's already one-ways there.
Can I answer the question for you?
You'll have an opportunity.
Sworn in yet, but-
We'll get to it. We'll have to get back to you on that with a later witness.
Okay, I would say that they should be removed from the plan, and I believe you testified the last time that they would be. The existing bank drive-through, the lane is indicated at 7.62 and proposed at 8.86. I know it's an existing situation, but do you feel that that's a wide enough drive-through width for any kind of, I mean, obviously it's existing for a bank, so if it's grandfathered in, but if you have any change in this for a drive-through other than a bank, that would have to be made conforming.
I think in that situation, we'd have to come back. We'd have to come back to the board if there was a different tenant other than another bank.
And do you feel that 7.62 feet is adequate for any drive-through, even a bank?
I think that's a tough question to answer. I think that's an existing condition. It works for a bank. For the queuing, you want to be close to the curb. That's what they're trying to corral you and channelize you to get close to that window. So I think in this situation, yes, it does work well. Is it a little undersized? Yes, it's an existing condition. But I've done them down to 8 foot on new sites. You know, we have 10 at the proposed Dunkin'. So I've done them down to 8. Some boards push me to go to a narrower drive-through, just so it tightens the cars up to the position. So not unheard of.
Okay. Can you explain a little better as far as access to the dumpster? It's angled funny. How would a garbage truck be able to access it?
Sure. So it's private waste hauler, so they have the ability to bring in whatever size fits for this location. What they'll likely do is come around and they'll load the dumpsters to the back of the pickup vehicle. So they'll they'll latch on the 3-yard dumpsters or the 4-yard dumpsters to the rear. They have cables, and it dumps into the back, and they're on their way.
So they would have to pull it out and then put them back in again?
Correct.
Okay, and it wouldn't be a regular-sized garbage truck then?
It would be a garbage truck that meets the needs of this facility. They have multiple sizes. If you go on to any of the major national brands, they have a fleet of vehicles on there. So, yes.
So they
It would not be your typical municipal waste pickup vehicle.
But they would block the drive, the pass-by lane anytime they're there?
For a matter of seconds, if not a minute. It doesn't take long to pick up the garbage, be on their way.
Okay, can it be scheduled for a time where it's not busy?
Sure. They typically come off hours early in the morning. They can adjust the schedule to after the rush hour if that's more accommodating to the site. But yes, we can certainly work with the borough and the borough's professionals to accommodate that.
Okay, that's all I have.
Ryan?
First off, I'd just like to, I am happy that we do have an ingress and egress. I did think that was a very, very poor design in the beginning. It certainly gets rid of a lot of the concerns that I had with pedestrians walking up to that pickup window and the in and out. So I'm happy that we've made those changes. I do have a few issues still. I said it at the last meeting, and I'm going to say it again. The parking that is labeled as number 1 all the way on the left of the drawing, and all of the spots in the back. Personally, I think most of them are unusable. And tough to use in the calculations of the spots that are there because they're very difficult to get into. I mean, number 1 is going to be very difficult to get into, and the one closest to the dumpster. But we're trying to get in what we can there. So. My comments there, I do have a comment and question, and I believe I raised it again at the last meeting with the bank drive-through. Someone is not using the drive-through. They are coming around the pass-by lane, I guess, the left lane. So they're going around the 2 drive-through windows, and I could see people running into that concrete pillar that's on here. So, right, we're keeping that covering over the drive-through. That's staying?
That's correct.
So I can see someone driving around there, and it looks like a very tight turn. Coming around, you've gone around the 2 drive-through lanes, and you're coming to that exit. And I can see that being an issue of someone driving and cutting that too close, either hitting whatever is, I guess, in the landscape area. I don't know if I assume that's a curb, or I could see someone hitting the actual support for the building.
Okay, so what we did is we're going to leave, there's a concrete island, like an oval island that surrounds those 2 support columns. We're going to leave that in to protect it. I could probably put some bollards in that space that's there, and I could probably widen out that the turning radius coming out of the property as well. I tried to open it up as much as I could. I probably can do a little bit better.
Right. I mean, I'm sure we want to have green space in there. I'm sure in the landscaping plan there's green in there. I just wouldn't want someone hitting one of those things and having some structural issue with the covering because someone can't make that turn.
I can certainly widen it out as much as possible. I just have to get it by the county. That's all. So I'm happy to do that. I have to.
So that space in there the county had some issue with that space?
No, it's just they're looking at the driveway, within a certain amount of feet of their right of way. So I just have to make sure they're on board with it. I think I can do it. I think we can improve on the design there.
Okay, that's my concern there.
And then your first question about the parking stalls, the parallel, the one directly on the western side opposite the pickup window, that's signed as employee only. We did hear the board's concern or especially your concern last hearing. So that is signed for employee only. And the last space adjacent to the dumpster is also signed for employee only. So those 2 spaces are dedicated for employees. We do realize that those are difficult spaces to traverse, so we will identify those as employee only.
Okay, yeah, because, some of us park better than others.
What we did there used to be 4 parallel parking spaces at the rear. They were not compliant per se, so we did eliminate 1, dropped it down to 3, and they all are compliant with, for the dimensional compliance.
Okay. Let's go to the complete opposite side of the property. Currently, people for the current Dunkin' Donuts are parking in the spots, I guess, on the north side of the bank property. Is there any sort of, and I don't know if you're the one to ask this question of, is there any sort of parking agreement with the property owner of the current Dunkin' Donuts building to have any issues with using those spots?
The current Dunkin' Donuts property has the ability through contract to use a certain number of spaces on the existing main property. That agreement goes away when that Dunkin' Donuts, or hopefully when that Dunkin' Donuts moves into its new space. So the only folks who will have access to the bank/music school property are the bank and music school, and Dunkin' will have access only to its own spaces that are proposed to be constructed.
Okay, so a new tenant comes into the new Dunkin' Donuts building, they don't have any rights to these parking spaces that are currently being used there?
Absent any kind of new agreement, no.
Okay. I don't think I have any more questions for you, so thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Michael? A couple of minor questions. Just for clarity, the bank is not just a drive-up facility. It's going to have walk-in tellers, correct?
Correct.
And then, we had mentioned this last time, the signage on the entryway from Kinderkamak on the bank and driveway, the sign's pulled out saying enter only drive-through, and we discussed that being confusing for people who are coming to the music school, and it says drive-through, they're gonna drive past it, realize that they're now in the spot they don't wanna be, and turn in the egress. So just cleaning up that sign so it doesn't say enter only drive-through as you come in off Kinderkamak, I think would help avoid some problems. And the other question, just to be clear, you said none of the driveways have any sort of restriction on turning, so the egress on the Dunkin' Donuts driveway, there's no prohibition against the left-hand turn there either?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Michael. Bruce?
Yeah, my questions are more traffic related, so I'm going to reserve until we have the next witness.
Gary?
I'm fine.
Mr. Berman?
I also echo the improvement this new layout shows. There's some of the concerns of the board and myself. I have a couple of items. Before you were referring to C14, drawing for Dunkin' Donuts signage. My C14 doesn't seem to show anything on what the Dunkin' Donuts signs look like.
Those are on the architectural.
C14 was the directional
I can't-
signs. C14 was the directional signs. I think
Okay.
what you're referring to, I agree with your planner, was on the architectural plans.
All right, well, the point remains, prior submissions had your Dunkin' Donuts signs laid out on paper. This submission is absent of that. I'm sure that you're gonna come back with a complete package later, correct?
The architectural plans which were previously submitted and testified to are in fact what you're, I
Okay.
guess, seeking. And I think there was some confusion at some point about which signs were going to be used and which ones weren't, and you asked us to put X's through the ones that aren't applicable to this site, which we've done. So that's on the architectural plans that were testified to at the last hearing. They haven't changed. The plans haven't changed since the last hearing. Other than, of course, we no longer have the monument sign, which is detailed here, that we gotta clean up and put an X on.
Okay. So basically, you're saying you're gonna revise that set of drawings to be current, what's been deleted?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine, that's what I need. And I would imagine that that drawing, well, let me backtrack a second. If I go to the site plan, on the Kinderkamak side of the building, your notations, sign 2, sign 1, and so forth. I assume that's gonna be tied into your architectural, what they are? Because right now, I have no way of,
I was just confirming with the witness.
No, that's-
Those sign designations are in two places. One in the sign table that's on that drawing, where it says proposed signage table. The 1s and 2s also relate. You can tell what those signs mean if you look at the signage table.
yes.
South elevation sign number 1, south elevation sign number 2 is the, and I think the north and south were confused. We go back down that path. We're not going there again. That's how they're labeled. I'm just reading what's on the plan. So.
Okay. I don't quite follow that. If I see sign 1,
Right, if I can approach it.
yes.
You'll see under here, it says, bear with me one second, sign number 1, sign number 2.
I got it, okay. So you've been working closely with these. Okay, that's good. Now, I'm very pleased with the walk-up window, and I assume it's going to remain where it was always proposed, the corner there.
It is now feasible to do that with this change, correct?
And you've now put a patio, you moved the patio over there.
Seating.
What I would like to suggest is that patio receives some kind of railing or barrier along the driveway side and maybe partial, at least, along the Kinderkamak perimeter. I'm thinking of something like a glass railing or something, and that purpose of that is to further preclude people cutting across that driveway to get to obtain access to the walk-up window.
I think that's feasible.
I don't have an issue with it.
And then I would be totally happy
That's fine.
on the walk-up window issue.
That's fine.
Okay. Let's go back to the EV situation, vehicle situation. The borough planner has a comment that the applicant has a note saying that there will be an EV spot or 2 per requirements. At the last meeting, we discussed the location of that. I would like the board to be the people who choose that. Consequently, I would like it to be labeled on the drawing, that location.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, my lucky day, I'm gonna buy a lottery ticket. All right. As I previously suggested, it would be the northwest corner. And if we go, I think we have parking spaces numbered over here.
But it's the last space.
Last space along the north perimeter.
Could I approach you?
Sure.
Sure.
Show me?
We're very approachable.
Good, now I know that.
I'm sharing you with him.
Perfect.
Over here.
Right there?
Yeah, I realize it's going to be a little more cabling, but I also realize that we're not tying a spot up close to the entrance of the building.
Could you explain the spot for the record, please?
Sure. Sure. There is, so there's a note on the plan which kind of explains briefly what the electronic vehicle parking, so there's electronic vehicle parking note on drawing C-03, and basically it says that the applicant's required to install at least one make-ready parking space if there will be 50 or fewer off-street parking spaces. So I will need one, and I would be happy to designate that space.
Can you tell us what we're really yearning to know on the record, what the space is that you're gonna mark?
Sure, it is, it is this back northwest space right here.
So it is the last space in the row of parking that runs perpendicular to the proposed sidewalk.
Correct.
And can you, just for the record, could you explain, particularly for the audience, what that space will be reserved for?
So it will be reserved for electrical vehicle charging. So if you have an electrical vehicle, there will be a space designated on the Dunkin' Donuts site that you could pull in and plug your car into.
Caffeine fix for cars.
Okay. One last one. I believe we all agreed there was going to be a streetscape. Correct?
I know we talked about it.
Okay.
Correct.
Right now, I don't see a plan that lays out, delineates that streetscape, especially with pavers, curbing, tree wells, so on and so forth.
Mr. Costa, you want to weigh in on this?
The good news is they have to.
Right.
That's it. So whether it, at this point, it could, if it is approved, it has to get into the resolution, but they have to. They have to improve their frontage.
And the
Repeat
street,
that.
and the borough has a street gate
They'll
design
be
in
given
place.
the specifications and the details for the streetscape to match, obviously, but they have to. They're going to have to improve their frontage.
Right, and now's the time to prepare that plan, correct?
Well, that's up to the board. I mean, it could get prepared now if the board wants to see it. They'd have to come back and present it, or regardless, prior to, I would say, a final approval, they would need to come back and show that plan, yes.
I believe we testified to the last hearing that we would work with the borough.
I believe that,
on
I brought
the
that up, and it
streetscape.
was agreed to, that you'll do what you have to do for the borough streetscape.
Correct. All of that property is within the county's right-of-way. So
Okay,
as long as it, you know, I'm
Doesn't
sure you
matter.
haven't had an issue with
Yeah,
it.
the county-
Other sections of the borough, it just has to go through county approval as well. That's all.
So the question is, at what point are you going to submit to this board those plans? Before final approval or during this current phase?
I would, if we're successful in getting approved this evening, I would prepare them right after. And
I don't think it's going to happen because you've got traffic and curfew.
Okay, we can certainly work with your board professionals and get some of the information back on the plan for if we have another hearing, sure.
What I would suggest, the landscape plan needs to be updated to reflect the shade tree, the
Yeah,
fence,
understood.
and the other detail. We'll add the streetscape detail to that as we receive it from Mr. Costa's office.
problem.
And we'll resubmit the landscape sheet with all that information.
That includes a plan view of the streetscape, not just a little detail.
No, they have to do the whole frontage.
Yeah, all right, okay,
Just like
yeah,
the
yeah.
landscaping
Yeah.
plan is laid out for the rest of the
Yes,
site,
yeah.
we'll add the details for the street frontage that matches
Okay.
the streetscape requirement.
No problem.
So, all right, so to summarize, it's pending, you will submit it.
We will add it.
Okay, no problem. I figured that was the case because of time. to get this correction going. Gentlemen, I think that's all I have tonight.
They call that ending on a high note. Got all three.
One of the good things about going last is I let everybody else ask my questions for me, including Ryan there. So I have nothing else, so at this point, unless our professionals have any other questions, I'm going to make a motion, ask for a motion to open to the public.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, so this is your opportunity to ask this gentleman, who's the engineer for the proposed project, any questions on something that he's already testified on. So I'm going to ask the first row. Mr. Barrett.
Chairman, testified that the operating hours would be for the store at 5 a.m., for the drive-in 6 a.m.
Correct.
Why?
I believe you're going to get some testimony from a representative from Dunkin' Donuts that could probably better prepare that answer for you. But my answer is we presented the hours of operation at our last hearing. We took the feedback from the board and the public, and we reduced the hours from what they were originally proposed to.
Right, now, that's just the gap, because I envision what will happen in that hour. When somebody pulls up to the drive-in, and it's not open, and they're going to start honking, and that's going to affect the neighbors. That's what I envision.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but there'll be a representative from Dunkin' that can talk to that issue.
We do have other witnesses, yes.
Okay, and are you familiar with any other locations that have that gap in hours between the store and the drive-in?
Offhand, I don't.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody from the second row? Anybody from the third row? Please. Come on up, Joe.
Mike.
Mr. Patazzi.
Good to see you. Where do you want me to go to?
Right there, it's good. There's a microphone there.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Joe Batazzi, 858 Summit Avenue, River Edge, New Jersey, 07661. You want me to spell that?
Sure.
I figured that. B as in boy, O-T-T-A-Z-Z-I.
All right, thank you.
So, Bill, I have just a couple of questions, and I'm going to just be transparent about my concern. Noise. I'm catty corner, right? So, right behind you is lot 21. I'm lot 26. So my questions are around, for example, over here, Bill. So when you said that the dumpster would be emptied in off hours, what are off hours? I'm not sure you could answer that, but.
Sure. Off hours would be non-peak hours. So potentially after the morning peak hour.
After the morning.
or
But not prior to 5.
I mean, it sounds like that would be a bad route to go. So
That would be a tough one.
we would, I'll tell you what, we can talk with the private waste hauler and come back with potential windows for pickup.
Okay. Next questions are around the noise level that's going to be emanating from the site. Bob, I don't know if there was a...
No testimony yet.
No testimony yet. So not to ask Bill.
You can certainly ask him. I don't know if he's going to have the answer, but I believe, Andy, if I'm wrong, you're going to bring in somebody tonight to discuss the ordering and the...
Yes, we have
Right.
our next witness.
Which is what? The traffic?
No, a representative from Dunkin' Corporate
Okay.
to speak to the ordering board volume and headsets that we started talking about at the last meeting.
Right. And then one last question. It does go around noise, but let me just make sure I heard you right. You talked about there could be 17 cars in queue. Do you mean from the beginning to the end?
Beginning to the end, correct.
Okay. And again, maybe not for Bill, has there been a noise impact analysis on automobiles and how much noise that's going to create starting at 6 in the morning?
Our office did not prepare such document.
Okay. That's a concern. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Mr. Patazzi. What would you consider a good time for garbage pickup? If you live in the area,
Well, the way I look at it, Mr. Chairman, is we have contractors that cannot start before 8 a.m., right? And that, when you hear everything start. So it would be sometime after that.
okay.
But that's my opinion.
So noted.
We have no issue with, stipulating that garbage pickup would occur after 8 a.m.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patazzi.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the third row?
Let me say that.
Anybody from the fourth row?
Still be.
And anybody from the fifth row? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay,
Thank
thank
you very
you.
much.
Mr.
Appreciate it.
Chairman, just one little thing, because I'm a little stickler. After 8 a.m., but let's think about this. After 8 a.m., you need a start and a finish. Otherwise, like 3 o'clock in the morning is after 8 a.m. So you need a start and a finish. Andy, just saying, you said anytime after 8 a.m.
I think we could stipulate between 8 and 5 would be a,
How about I stipulate the board can decide?
okay.
Talking about what time a garbage truck is gonna come is not really,
Well, if I lived behind it, I probably
it's
would.
important to the residents from an operations standpoint. We would just not want it to happen during our peak hour when our
Right.
lots are maximum.
So anytime,
Other than that, we're
let's stipulate anytime between 8 and 5. Is the board good with that?
Yes.
Mr. Patazzi, you okay with that, being that you brought it up?
No?
Okay, so between 8 and 5. We'll give you some latitude. Anybody else, nobody else from the audience, so we closed to the public already. So, continue.
And just a reminder to use the microphone, please. Just use the microphone, please. Thanks.
No. Sad.
I saw you were raring to go in the back there.
I am.
I didn't realize that you were,
A lot of
that
your
you,
questions.
yeah, you should have came up to the council and let them know.
No, he told me not to. Thank you.
Good
I guess
evening.
I need to swear in or something?
We have to do everything.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
All right, please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your business address for the record and what you'll be testifying to.
Connie Justice, J-U-S as in Sam, T-I-S as in Sam. And my business address is my home, I'm a remote worker, so it's 1046 Nicholson Avenue, Nichholson, Lakewood, Ohio.
Lakewood, Ohio. Okay.
Connie has come a long distance. to
And this
answer
is your
questions
traffic
today.
expert, correct?
No.
Oh, okay. You are testifying for?
So I'm here on behalf of Dunkin' Corporation, actually Inspire Brands now, and I am the drive-through expert for the brand, and as a lot of people say, I'm the global expert. I did the side-by-side design for McDonald's and brought that to Dunkin'.
Okay.
So, Connie, you're currently employed by Inspire Brands, correct?
Correct.
And as you indicated, you have experience in not only the design, but the operation of Dunkin' drive-throughs.
Absolutely.
And the dual drive-through concept is something you're also very familiar with, correct?
Absolutely.
Both in terms of its operations and the improvements that are necessary to operate them, such as the menu boards, the audio systems, and the time of service goals that are anticipated for these type of configurations.
Yeah, it's basically from the inside of the store out when you're a drive-through expert, because you have to figure out the kitchen and the engine and make that go fast so your drive-through can go fast.
So why don't you?
And one other thing, all signage and all equipment and all the placement of the signage is also a part of what I did and have done in this particular instance.
And in terms of this particular location, you've had an opportunity to look at the layout that is being proposed?
and I think I supplied it and worked with the engineer.
And it was much appreciated. And finding a way to get the dual curb cut to work, as you can see, it was well received as a revised concept by the board. What is the goal of a dual drive-through? Obviously, it's somewhat of a new feature that we're starting to see some more of in practice.
So dual drive-through started back in the late 90s in California, and the objective is that when my previous employer, McDonald's, who I worked for 44 years, we had an obstacle of too many cars and we couldn't get them through fast enough. And as we started doing all of our research, the bottleneck became the order points. It's the longest single function that the customer has with us as an interface. If our engine is running, it's going to be the longest piece. And if I can't get the orders moved quickly enough and out, because somebody takes a long time, whatever, it causes a backup out into further than you would want to and obstruct the drive-through in McDonald's situation. This site here is beautifully laid out from my perspective, and not because I was involved in it, from the flow, the double entry, but it's about eliminating the order taking time so that I can get enough cars through and keep from backing out onto the street, because not only is it your concern, it's ours. The customers have told us in research that when in a single lane you're at the order point and there are two cars behind them, that they are reluctant to use our drive-throughs. They start pulling away at the third car, the fourth car more. We also know from research, not only internal, but as a system in the QSR industry, that the guest objectively wants to be on and off the parking lot in 5 minutes or less, and that they move at every 30-second clip. And that's the objective and the design of everything we did on side-by-side, both external and internal, to make this function. And that not only corrects the backup problems, it also helps us keep more guests coming and service more people and almost double the hourly capacities that we have.
In terms of current data, there is two components of the business on site. There is an inside and there is the drive-through.
Yeah.
Have the percentage of business generated from the inside versus the outside changed over the last couple of years?
Yes, that's really when I think all of you started seeing it, and we all did when we drove around. We saw COVID really impacted our business because there was no inside. Drive-through was always about 65% of the business. It got up to as high as 90% of the business, and the rest was all mobile order. Not only that, the average check increased. So Dunkin's typical consumer, and we're getting back to that today, orders 1 to 3 items per ticket. 1 to 3 items, I can lickety-split those through. But they weren't used to people coming and ordering huge amounts of foods and huge amounts of beverages. And on top of it, the ability to staff the stores was very challenging at that time with COVID going around. And so COVID magnified our opportunities of brand that we had to improve our drive-through service, and that was already in the works and being ready to be deployed. And these are what you see, and what Rama and her husband have agreed to is the newest, latest, and greatest that's going to be able to make these cars move way faster than you can ever imagine. I just trained their operations team for Dunkin' because they're starting to own it, and the senior director of operations said, I only believed that could work in a training store. She said she'd never seen another store in one of our best running side-by-sides run as effectively. So it's got a long way to go, and we're doing a great job. It's about how do you understand there's a domino effect to every decision that we made. Dunkin' also used to have a 5-car stack. That was not enough in the way that we prepare our food. And so we moved it back to 6, 7, and 8 wherever we can, because the longer the runway when it's on the screen, the faster they can go on the inside. It keeps it flowing as an assembly line, and they move quicker.
The Dunkin' is also pretty famous for its app?
Yes.
And has that affected the amount of orders that are remotely taken and
Yeah.
processed at the counter?
Yeah, the national average has moved all the way up to 30%. One of the biggest in the Inspire Brands umbrella. And now that we're getting back out, a good portion of that does come through the drive-through and both in-store, and that'll also be a point of distribution at the walk-up window as well.
And all of those components, and hopefully getting back to normal with post-COVID behind us, is there a target or an expectation as to how much of the business of a site is likely to be drive-through app order versus traditional counter service?
So if we're doing 30%, I would say that it would be about 15% would go through the drive-through. There's longer-term things planned, but until it's really an advantage, only a few people, half of them, that's about what we see in the industry or in our brand right now, go through the drive-through. The others still choose to walk in and grab it or go to a walk-up window.
So when you add the component of the app service that has moved to the drive-through as a additional layer of convenience to the traditional amount of service that would be had at the drive-through, which I think you said was 65% at one point.
65, it'll end up netting out 70 to 75 in
That's where
a
I'm saying.
side-by-side store.
So somewhere between 70 to 75% of the visitors to this site will be running through the drive-through as opposed to parking and entering the store or the walk-up location.
Yes.
And that obviously changes the dynamics of how many vehicles the drive-through should be able to handle and how many traditional parking spaces are required.
Yes.
Now, in terms of the flow through the drive-through, what is the anticipated service goal of moving somebody, through that, I'll call it the drive-through assembly, the outside assembly line?
So the objective is by having two orders, and we have another tool that they're already working on, and it is how do you take an order. So you can make an order fast or long. Our objective in Dunkin' is 25 seconds or less. With that tool, the anticipated time with that, as well as a number of mobile orders that just come up and do it, would be about 18 seconds on average in an hour for them to do it during their peak periods of time. And that's going to help us fill the lane in front and keep the assembly line moving constantly. What would happen before the stop-and-go traffic, when they were backed up, there were no more orders, and if something was done and they were just waiting for one item, they couldn't keep moving in the kitchen, so it was like stop-and-go traffic in there.
What would be the expectation of a customer, let's just say peak hour for now, who would enter this site from the time they enter to the time they leave the site with their order if they were running through the drive-through? What would be the service goal for that event?
The total experience time from when they get in the line and then exit the store is 5 minutes. That's the objective. And in this environment, I have seen that possible. Dunkin', this is a newer concept to Dunkin'. I don't have all of that factual information. We only have like 6 stores already open. We're opening more all the time, but we are exceeding that in most situations already.
There were a lot of questions at a prior hearing concerning the audio and volume levels that are associated with the order boards, with an eye towards protecting the residential folks who live, to the rear, let's just say to the rear of the property. Are you familiar with the current audio system that's used in these locations and what their features and volumes might be?
Sure. The volumes are all adjustable based on the geographic area of the extraneous sounds, but there's a very sweet spot that they try to do on inbound and outbound, so it's not just one, it's inbound and outbound. And that's all adjustable. So I'm going to stay on the headset system itself as well. It also has an internal timer within the system that we can set it for my friend back here that I met, for timing at night, That's also our lowest volume hours of the day. Our hours of operations in Duncan are from 7 a.m. to 11, our peak periods, and then it dies off. But at the low volume periods of time and with the timer, we have a reduction in the noise level of what the outbound traffic is by 25% automatically when we set the timers up appropriately. It could be set up the same way in the morning, so it starts off lower. At our peak times when it's noisier, it automatically increases, and then it'll go back in the evening and recalibrate and go down. As far as my job is drive-throughs, so I will tell you personally, I listen to a lot of drive-throughs, I time a lot of drive-throughs, and if I were standing right here, trying to listen to the customer, I can't even hear this inside lane person speaking, because the way we design the speaker post is to block a lot of that noise level. And so the microphone that the guest speaks into is basically right at their level, and it's a sweet spot for all car variations. And then you drop down another 24 inches, and that is the speaker for where we're communicating to them. That speaker is going right into the side of the car, so it becomes a natural barrier to a lot of the sound and what you would be capable of hearing at that point in time.
If there were a situation where the volume of the speaker system was found to be objectionable, it could be, further toned down on request.
It can be. I mean, the customer has to hear us speak, and we have to hear them. But yes, it can be toned down.
And based upon your experience working with the audio devices, is it likely that a resident located at the rear property line of this site would be able to hear any of the transaction, the audio portion of the transaction from the drive-through?
Not in the communication at all. They would not be able to hear it. You're almost 100 feet away from most of those in the direction of the microphone.
And the menu boards that are the location where this audio system operates from, those menu boards are in fact oriented away from the rear property line.
That is correct. They have to be strategically positioned for visibility and glare, so they're at a very specific angle. Everything we did for signage, placement, everything is about, somebody was talking about consumer behavior and driving into that tight bank area. Sure. Everything we did to redesign these was to make it simpler and easier for the guests to use. Ergonomic designs, turning radiuses, visibility, what you're doing, and so those are positioned where that they will not be very, very bright in the evening. One of them's not even really towards the direction of the flow or the houses in the back, and the other one is a slight angle. And at night, they do have a variation of tint that does happen automatically as well.
This site proposes or suggests capacity for a 16/17 car queue. Not speaking for the board or this community standards, but from a Dunkin' standard, is that a sufficient queue for this site to operate in a manner that not only is safe, but acceptable to Dunkin' brand?
Absolutely. This everything about this layout falls right within the specs. We've designed everything from, really it starts at the pickup window, and pickup window forward, you're supposed to have 2 to 3 cars in front of that, and then behind, to get to a side-by-side should be a 6-car stack to the inside. This one I believe is 7 if I recall correctly, and then you need a minimum of 3 cars in a single lane behind that. You would far exceed any of those expectations, and then the travel distance that you would need from the ingress at the street is further than the Dunkin's recommended guidelines today.
So from a Dunkin' standpoint, this site far meets or exceeds the design standards that Dunkin' would impose based on its new design requirements.
I would say it's one of the biggest and best layout stores that I've been involved in, and it's been over 200 in Dunkin' in the last 2 years.
Now, I know when the testimony was proceeding before you, you had wanted to share some information concerning
On the sign?
signage.
Yeah, so I-
here's your opportunity.
I wanted to address that issue. We have branded and unbranded Dunkin' signs. The branded has the icon DD on it. Those are not even recommended now with the current size of our ingress. However, our consumer research was unbranded, told us we need to have a sign that tells them they have a drive-through. Potentially not having that could be an issue with cars trying to make a turn when they didn't know and realized it was there. So we typically have a word drive-through. I did bring my computer up so I could show you
That wasn't
what
my-
they would look like.
That wasn't my comment.
Somebody
Drive-through.
was,
I think the comments were here. There's a "See You Soon" sign on the back side and another one on this side that says "Welcome Back."
yeah, that shouldn't say those. If I were doing that, I would give you a different recommendation. It's supposed to say drive-through on one side, enter or exit, see you soon, and exit on the back side. So,
Well, those are extra signs. There's already one-way signs.
no, they're two-sided signs.
No, but there's already a one-way sign, so I don't think you need those directional signs, is my point. It's just extra signage.
Well,
There's a one-way arrow sign.
so where does it say one-way?
There's a
Because one
one-way.
thing that the consumer will share is if the one-way's facing them, they don't see it until they're already turning. And that's what we've learned. So if they're not this direction, which are the angled signs, that creates a bit of an obstacle for the guests. They don't see it until they start to turn in.
Well, I think the one-way sign is important to be correct.
I think, let me ask the question this way. Would it be acceptable or a problem to remove the "Welcome Back" or the "See You Soon" component of the signage and keep the directional nature of it? I think that's what
That's what I'm
the
saying,
board
yes.
member is getting at.
And that's what I'm sharing with you, is the signs that I would propose have a directional that says drive-through with an arrow this direction, so it's directing them that they're going into the lot on one side, and the other side would be see you soon to the customer here. Typically, we do 4 of them, 2 on each side of the drive aisle, and each side's telling them something differently to give them the guidance that they need, and that's the stuff that they told us in their research is I need to see and understand. Having just a sign that says one way, if you're driving this way and the sign's this way, I don't see it in advance of that. I only see it when I turn. When it's at an angle like this and I'm approaching, I see the word drive-through with an arrow that tells me it's an entrance automatically to the store. I'm going in there. On this side, it can still be a drive-through because somebody's here. If we had one on the other side, it would say enter only, so that they're seeing everything and being able to react in advance of instead of later. And that's the research that we have. What you decide to do with that, I mean, and if you want a one-way sign, ours has no branding other than the word drive-through with an arrow, and see you soon is a thank you to come back. The backside of that one would say exit only, so that as the cars are coming in this direction, they know it's an exit only, and if we had another one, they would be saying exit only on the opposite sides. That's what our objectives are for those directionals, is to give guidance and clearance and clarity for the consumer on the street, which is, we spent over 2,000 unannounced shops, unbranded, getting the feedback saying what's the gold standard drive-through signage, everything that you want, all across the U.S. And I could show you a picture of what they would look like. Sorry, I had my cap lock on. So while, can I approach?
Absolutely.
So while this is showing the icon with the DD, it would be these signs down here that we're talking about unbranded, just with the Dunkin' pink on them.
Was this previously submitted?
I don't believe it was. We will
Mark it.
print and then mark it at a subsequent meeting, but I'll identify it when she
Okay.
brings it back around.
We get hard copies of this sent to us.
And I can actually have them put what would go where on the signs if you would allow them, but it does really, I can only tell you, and so, not only did I do operations and the design work, but I worked with people.
gotta change it.
I was a consumer analyst, and I watched consumer behaviors,
I'm not
and
sure.
then we do a lot of consumer research.
Gonna have to keep the computer.
You want to, go ahead.
What, do you send an email out? You don't have email.
I can send it all. I actually have live pictures. We just did a store showing our senior leadership for Inspire, how all of that interfaces and makes it better for the guest. Just the ones that don't have the DD on them.
Did she answer what you concerned?
I'm a little
Yes.
confused.
Otherwise, we gotta take.
You're showing the drive-through sign up in here, right?
No.
That's what the directional sign drive-through, it points to here.
So I'm not looking at that. I was showing you
Okay.
what I was thinking was this out here, right there, and the one over here.
What I think we're going to propose to do is we'll revise the directional signage plan, and we'll kind of do an enhanced plan that shows specific sign at that
These.
location, and bring it back for
So
another
many
look by the board.
appropriate sides and the two
Just
sides.
to make it simple.
Where though?
Because they're signs, so, you know, yeah, so we'd have to kind of have a better understanding of what it's going to look like.
Agreed.
Over here because that's a sidewalk.
Counselor, after this witness, you have just your traffic for tonight, is that correct?
It is,
It's
but
about 10 after, so, no, I want to try to get it in. He's here, our traffic expert is here, so if we can just try to expedite a little bit.
Yep.
Certain that's gonna work.
Let's see how it works out.
Let me just identify what was shown. What was shown to the board, and we'll provide hard copies of, is the drive-through directional sign. We'll provide a sheet, and we'll mark what it is actually at the next meeting. It shows both sides of the proposed sign as well as a profile view.
I can also show.
Can't hear a word
Could
you're
you
saying.
just email me a copy of that when you advise?
And this is gonna be 8:30?
We'll mark it at the next hearing, so we can either hold a place for it now or mark it next time.
Yes,
Your
please.
choice.
We'll hold it at 8:30, please.
Sure. Just get it on my notes. I have no further operational questions at this point. I make Connie available for yours or your board's professionals' questions.
I'm going to open it up to the board at this point. I'm sorry, let Mr. Costa or Tom?
Either way, we just discussed with this young lady, revise the plan, show the exact signs, this way, with the directional, one side, no side, where does it go? Colorize it so everybody knows what's going on. Then I think, once you figure out the directional arrows, then bring in the traffic person to say, this is the signage, this is where it's going, this is the circulation, because, Mr. Chairman, you have their traffic expert,
We have ours.
the board's traffic expert, and Lou Lugio, who's under a mask, the opposition traffic expert. So I think to clarify the record,
Okay.
not to have it clouded, and a streetscape that might have something to impact something. That's my personal opinion, but you're the chairman, and obviously...
I didn't
the
realize
board-
we had a third traffic person here. Well, let's finish with this witness for now. Rob, do you have anything else for this witness?
The only thing, this is the only thing, and then, because I'm always the bearer of bad news and good news. This case maybe. Some people say I go to Florida too often. North Lake Boulevard.
You have a nice tan.
North Lake Boulevard in West Palm Beach. The only reason I went past Dunkin' Donuts, I went to Crunch Jam, as you can tell. Otherwise, I couldn't keep this receipt. But the traffic is backed up onto North Lake. So you go on, this Google is tremendous. You go on and you look at the reviews. And basically, they say it's the staffing problem or when they close the interior, But if you read some of the reviews, it takes 25 minutes to get through the drive-through. You can't get in, you can't get out, staffing problems, so on and so forth. I understand if everything works perfectly, 18 seconds. Seems a little fast. But what if the staffing isn't correct, it doesn't work correctly? From Ohio, I understand you're not going to be able to see that. But if you live in River Edge and drive down
Trust
Kindercomack
me, I
Road.
go to lots of places, so.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest.
Uh-huh.
One must put their money where their mouth is. So if this doesn't work properly, and you can't compel the operator to change that, how does this board come into the rescue? And this would be my suggestion. You will hire a police officer if traffic backs up onto the roadway and creates a nuisance. And that'll make them do it quicker, because I think that the rate now is probably $150 an hour. So I would imagine they'll straighten it out in seconds.
So
Not
I would-
hours, not minutes, not months. It'll be straightened out.
It will be, but I'm gonna also offer you another
Go ahead.
thought. Beaver Creek, Ohio was the very first store, and I didn't live there. I lived in Philadelphia. I worked for Dunkin', but Inspire brought us. Beaver Creek, almost 2 years ago, came to my attention because people knew I had done the McDonald's double drive-through. It was a brand-new store, not even open a year. Very busy. Wrapped out 21 cars onto a 4-lane highway. It was a dead-end street, and there was a preschool across. They kept getting notices that they were going to be closed down, that they were going to start fining them. They were going to do that. So what did they do? They reached out to the brand. The brand tapped on me, said, Connie, can you help us?
Okay.
So I actually have a video somewhere of Travis testifying. We redid that store. It wasn't even a year old. Redid that store. Did not, because it was 1 year old, we didn't put in the 2-window configuration, which makes it even faster. But we did an optimized window. They were at a 5-car stack, moved them back to a 6, and if you want to see those plans, I can show you where they were before and after.
No,
It's only, but I was
I
going to
believe
say,
you.
no more 21-car stack,
But-
it's 10.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. But based on what these little reviews say, the staff has to produce. If their staff doesn't produce, you can have 2 windows, you can have hundreds of windows. What I'm saying is, if this becomes a nuisance,
Yep,
just to protect
the
this
board.
board and any decisions they make, if it becomes a nuisance, you will hire a police officer if this backs up into Kindercomack Road, because between where you are and probably Main Street, just south of here, in the morning, roughly, I think the average daily volume on this road is roughly 35,000 cars per day. So we don't want to impact that.
So I can't speak on behalf of the franchise owners. That's not my role, but I believe that they would.
We don't want to believe. We want for sure. So we just need your credit card imprint. That's all we need.
We'll take the request back to the operator and report back at the next meeting.
Excellent.
I've said yes too many times tonight already.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Costa.
But I don't think you're going to have to worry about it.
Okay.
Tom?
Just, I mean, yeah, there's a real operational concern. Staffing is critical, and we don't want to get to the position where you have to hire a police officer.
Right.
Or that just can't happen, I would suggest. Just to that point. And finally, with regard to signage, less is more. And with directional signing, I think the board would prefer to not have advertising. If it says drive-through to educate the public, that's one thing versus slapping DD all over everything.
Yeah, we're not going to have any DDs on it.
Okay, so those are my comments.
Colin?
No comments.
Nothing additional?
Just had a couple of questions, just to clarify. You said that you're well within the amount of cars in the queue, 16 or 17.
It's more than most Dunkins would ever have.
How many would you typically expect in a rush hour at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning? Cars to be. Is there an average amount of cars that would typically end up in those?
Arrival rate, and there's a lot of things that go into variations, and it depends on the store volume and how quickly they come. But I would say what we have there should easily handle anything. I was just giving you the Beaver Creek example of 21 cars queued. They never have more than 8 to 10 queued at any time because the processing speed is so much faster now with the new design of the kitchen, the way that the store's laid out, and so they move them through. The stores for that operator have already done 170 cars an hour and nothing on the streets.
And how many employees are handling those?
During those peak periods?
Yeah, so the morning traffic is really what we'd be most concerned about.
And morning traffic depends on their arrival rate. So an average store at Dunkin' is 6 to 7 employees to start at their peak periods and management. The busier the store goes all the way from that to 9, 10, or 11 people. And that would be dependent on the store's volume and what the arrival rate would be.
Okay, and then we were talking about mobile orders before. So mobile orders could be done in the drive-through, picked up in the store, and picked up at the
Or
outside window?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone pulls into that drive-in window, is on their phone.
They come to the speaker and they announce it, and then they pull forward, and there's a button, they put them in the queue, and all they do is walk up, and they know who they are. There's mobile orders on top of the drive-through carts now.
Okay, because I know that's a big part.
Yep.
My wife does it all the time. I think that's changing because a lot of
Yeah,
people
we
use
are
apps.
changing a ton on mobile order and have in relationship to where we're going.
Okay, so that customer will have the option to do any 3 of those options to get their food. I think that's it.
Really
Thank you.
about whatever the customer wants, where they want it, when they want it, and how they want it, and trying to make them happy and deliver on what they need.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to interrupt the change just for a second. I go to Mr. Klein. I see he wants to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So can you tell me a range of the number of vehicles per hour that this store you think will be able to handle, or
This
the
sto-
maximum number?
This store in a 7-car stack could get up to 200 cars in an hour if they had a continuous flow of cars. There's a lot of variabilities that go into that, what they're capable of, but it's really about average check and if the pump is primed fast enough all the time.
Right, so 200 cups of black coffee easily.
Easily.
The more complicated, the more items
Exactly,
you have, the little bit
exactly.
slower. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Mr. Gray?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. One, you talked about the adjustment on the volume of the drive-up audio system. Is that purely, I'm going to program it to be louder and softer at different times of the day, or does that drive off of ambient noise?
No, it's not ambient noise, it's time of day.
Okay.
But there is noise reduction built on both ways of the new headset systems coming forward, but I don't know how much that amplifies down the outbound if they sense something different. That's all new and not fully released yet.
Okay. And you'd said that at kind of peak operation here, maybe 11 people working to fill orders at peak time.
Well, what I said is that it's going to depend. I mean, everybody has to make money, so there's a balance between how many cars are doing in an hour, how many inside traffic, so they staff based on those guidelines.
Right.
When you start getting upwards of about 130 cars an hour, you're going to be around 9 to 11 people in the store.
Okay, and I'm trying to remember, how many parking spaces do we have here?
There are 13.
So effectively, if this is running at peak, and being that we're in literally the most densely populated state in the country, on one of the busiest areas in the state, hitting 130 plus is probably not going to be a challenge. We're going to be using most of the parking spaces then for employees.
I would tell you in my experience that I never see more than 3 or 4 cars on a parking lot. People share, they use mass transportation, they'll use Uber, mom drops them off, dad drops them off. 3 to 4 cars on a parking lot are employees typically, even at the peak.
Okay. And I don't know if you capture this number. Somebody drives onto a lot, assume nobody's in front of me. I drive up and I drive up to the order station. typical time from when I've driven onto the lot, made my order, and I've moved forward now? And I know it varies, but if you were gonna kind of, is that a 2-minute?
The whole experience time,
No,
or
no.
just,
Just to place my order and then move up to the payment window?
well, to drive onto the lot and get in from that configuration, I'm gonna guess somewhere around 7 or 8 seconds, and it's 18 seconds to place an order, unless it's a huge order. If it's a huge order, it's gonna be 30 or so, so you're talking less than 30 seconds if there's nobody on the parking lot and they drive right up. Our requirements on the inside, and our timing is done via a timer, so it's recording this, is that they answer by the third beep. And so that 18 seconds is responsive to when they hear the beep, their 5 seconds to respond and take the order and pull them
Right.
forward.
Okay, but you said the typical transaction is 5 minutes.
That's,
So,
no, I did not. I said the guest expectation is 5 minutes from the time they enter the lot until they're gone at any time of the day. If you're stacked out, that's what their guest expectation is, 5 minutes or less. But really, their visual cue is every 30 seconds they want to move. And that's why our order taking has to be just slightly less than our pickup window, so they can order and move more quickly. Then I can hand you your food, your beverage, put it away, and them drive away. And so you're keeping, it's almost like you're over the top of the world looking at it, and it's just constantly moving from every point of
So
distribution.
during those peak times of high traffic flow, what is the actual time from driving on to I pull out with my donuts? and
In the
coffee?
side-by-side drive-throughs, we're meeting the 5 minutes or less, and the ones that have opened according to the standards. There were some tests that were done outside of it, and they didn't do it. If they're following these standards, which is what they have designed here, is those standards, we are meeting and exceeding the 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Pfeffer?
How are you? Good. We're all getting tired. Yeah, a lot of my questions have been answered, so thank you for that. I do have one last question, which involves the whole issue of labor shortage and availability of labor to staff the needs of each particular location. Has there been any either formal study, or do you have any sense based on existing stores in this area as to whether there are any problems meeting the staffing needs of those stores?
So I would not know about an area. I can only tell you that nationally that the staffing has gotten easier the further we are from the crux of COVID, number one. Number two, when Rama and her husband and this team first reached out to me, one of the very first questions I ask is, are you able to staff your stores adequately? If you cannot, don't build a side-by-side drive-through, because you're going to bring on more cars than you have the capacity to output. And so we talk about that. Dunkin' is in the process of deploying it. That's one of the guidelines that they have with their business consultants. If you, Mr. Operator, don't today staff your store, we're going to advise you don't do side-by-side, because we don't want them shutting the lanes all the time. It needs to be open all day, every day, and you've got to staff. And so that's part of it that's there. Staffing is also a huge part of staffing is how do you treat your employees? And so all of that becomes what Rama and her husband and I talked about, them being prepared. How do you staff for that? How do you build that engine? And how do you make sure that you maintain those staffing levels all the time?
So I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm getting at is not what the projection is. In other words, it's, frankly, it's easy to say, yes, I think we'll be able to staff, to hire the number of people that we're going to need. But in practical reality, how is that working in the existing stores?
I can only tell you the side-by-sides we have, which are very limited, that they make a concerted effort, and they are never understaffed, or they would not be doing 140 to 170 cars in an hour.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the best that I can offer you, is that you've got to have the right person running the organization. that knows what their potential can be, and they can achieve whatever they want to do.
Okay, thank you. I have
Thank you,
nothing
Mr.
further.
Pfeffer.
But it's a great question.
Thank you. And you gave a great answer.
Thank you.
Mr. Esposito.
I'm fine.
By the way, next time you come, you got to bring samples,
Yeah, I will.
especially the coffee at this time of the.
I think that's called bribery.
Mr. Merman.
There's an open question on hours of operation that Mr. Barrett asked, and I'm gonna defer to him later, because you'll have a conversation which will all benefit. That's it.
Okay, so, one of the serious issues I had is that although it's located in a commercial zone, it backs up to a residential area. And I'm sure you visited the site, so you see that there's an incline, but my concern is still the ordering process and the noise that's generated, especially on a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, when everything is very quiet, except for that speaker. And that speaker is directly facing Summit Avenue, which is our residential zone. So one of the things I thought about, and visiting one of your competitor, well, not a competitor, but Chick-fil-A over on Route 4, they had instead of having their order board stopped when they go to the one spot, they had two order boards on the side by side where the dual cars are, and you were able to do two orders at one time. And then as you turned in, there was somebody here to verify who you were, and then as you turned in, they gave you your order. Would there be a huge problem if you moved the order board from facing our residential area to facing the bank, where it's a commercial zone and there's nobody there to be bothered by that noise anymore? And you would, and I guess you would have to visit Chick-fil-A over on Route 4 to see what I'm talking about. But what they did was, they have the side by side, just like we're doing here, and instead of going into one lane and then coming around and placing your order, you're able to have two people simultaneously give their orders in front of those boards, and then as they circle around, they pick up their orders.
So I would ask you to do the service time for your Chick-fil-A versus this version. They're never gonna hit 5 minutes or less at Chick-fil-A, number one, but I understand what you're saying.
I just want to get the noise away from
I
Summit
don't
Avenue.
think that you're close enough to be there. When I look at this, you're at 30 feet across these two aisles. You have another 40 feet and another 40 to 60 to get to the area there. If you want us to take a look at doing something different, I'm not sure that it'll maintain some of the depth.
Or even if you move the order board from directly behind the building to the caddy corner area where they come into one car, just so it's directed away from our residential area.
So I'm not quite sure. You're going to have to show me what you're talking about, but that menu board and where it's positioned and the order points are very strategic to our operations on the inside of the store.
I understand the strategic for the benefit of the store, but I'm talking about the strategic for the benefit of our residents.
Mr. Chairman.
And I'm going to guess that a lot of the people, or some of the people that are here, are from Summit Avenue and have that concern.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest to you this, and I've spoken to the witness in anticipation of this type of question coming. That back property line, as you know, is proposed to have a significant wall, a barrier. That, coupled with the technology of the ordering system that is being proposed, leads us to Mr. Costa's path of being able to say comfortably that we think if this is built the way it's designed and operates, that there will be no audible noise that you can discern from the property line along the residential area. I have no problem suggesting a post 6 month, period where if there is a problem, the system is adjustable, as we indicated. We'll make the adjustments so that there isn't a problem. We're that confident that between the geometric design of the wall the technology and the system, we'll give you guys the final say in proving the pudding.
Rob?
The only thing, based on the testimony, and maybe I either misunderstood or misheard it, the speaker system works on ambient sound, though. You said it didn't. The new speaker systems that are out there, if it's quiet, it adjusts itself automatically. You said you have to adjust it manually.
So, what I said is that they are working on a noise reduction input and output. It is not released to the system today yet. It is close to being there, but I don't know enough to know if it automatically adjusts those sounds or not.
Okay, I know there's other speaker, it could be McDonald's, it could be Burger King, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure it works on ambient sound and adjusts automatically.
Well, what I would offer to you is this, Mr. Costa, let us go back, post this meeting and check. If it's available or could be available at the time that this is constructed, we would agree to use it. Sure. And we'll report back to you about, whether that's possible.
Yeah. I happened to meet a guy on a plane going down. He was a professor at Rutgers with a PhD, going down to consult, believe it or not, West Palm Beach last weekend. I was sitting next to him. He was studying the entire noise ordinance. He's a Rutgers professor, and I actually asked him that question, and he said, it works on ambient sound, so maybe it's a different speaker system, or...
Well, there's only certain systems that work in the QSR industry. I do know that HME and PAR, as well as another one, are working on those things. They are in test, and I don't know the exact answer to your question yet because it's in test.
As a favor, if you could possibly just have your engineer look at the possibility of moving that order board. Even if you say no, I would like to at least have your engineer take a look at it.
I always love
Because I would feel a lot more comfortable voting yes on this project if I knew for sure those people up the hill were not going to be bothered.
That's what I was trying to provide to you with the
And
offer.
you did a great job, and you were a wonderful wealth of knowledge. But I need to still feel comfortable myself, because I know if somebody did this to me, what has been done, by the way, the middle school I live across the street from decided to put an outdoor speaker in, so every morning I get to hear the morning announcements.
Can I ask you to do a homework assignment then?
So
I need you to go to a McDonald's that has a 2-lane drive-through and stand on the outside edge. And
I don't
see
know
what
of any around here. The only one honestly,
Addresses.
is that it too?
River Edge
Okay.
has it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And check it a couple times, morning, noon, and night, and see what you hear. I can't hear.
And I'll send you the bill, is that for?
Yeah, you send me a bill, I'll send you some donuts.
All right. I would like to entertain a motion open to the public.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Oh, wait, Mr. Merman. I got you.
good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, any opposed, any abstain? It is getting late, isn't it? Anybody in the first row?
I believe you heard my question before. What happens between 5 and 6?
Well, that's an easy one.
Okay.
The crew people will have to wear a headset, and when somebody comes, they're gonna have them pull to the window or not operate it at all. That's all they can do. They can't answer it, or we can put up a sign, or we can put something in beside, to cone off the drive-through lane until 6 a.m. Any of those things are viable options.
Are there any facilities in the area where that is what occurs? They have an opening for the store and a later opening for the drive-through?
I have not in this area, and I wouldn't know individually, but I have had this happen even in my previous career in McDonald's, and that's what we did. We put a sign that said either come to the window to order or something like that for that 1 hour, or we just closed the lane and said drive-through's not open until 6 a.m.
And what's the purpose of doing it that way, though, the split opening?
Well, so I wasn't here, so somebody else will have to ask. I believe that there was some concerns, and that was, that the ask was that we not open the drive-through until 6 a.m. because of the traffic noise more traffic noise than there was about,
So it's not, there's nothing to do operational?
no,
Okay,
not at all.
thank you.
It's actually a hurt for us to not open the drive-through because that's where we get our most there. And they'll be better prepared for the 6 a.m. big rush if they are open at 5 a.m.
What's the typical increase in visits, the drive-through versus facility that doesn't have a drive-through? How much does that increase business?
The national average we've been on a push in Duncan, it's somewhere between 25 and 30% increase of traffic or car volume. I don't know cars, but yeah. Your sales go up 25 to 30%.
Thank you.
Good?
Yes.
Second row? Anybody? Third row? Fourth row? Good evening, how are you tonight?
Hi, Deborah Powell, 69 Christie Avenue. I would
Come on up.
Mike.
You know what, just take, yep.
Thank you. I would concur with Mr. Costa.
This is a new day for me.
Yes, with being concerned about Kindermack Road traffic. And will the police officer make the car go on or make room for him?
Again, I think it's the only way you solve the problem, because based on just a couple of reviews, and if you don't staff it properly, you can't get the cars through. And I understand, the idea is to get the drive-through, to be successful, to make money, so on and so forth. But at what detriment? You want to make sure there's no detriment. And if you can't staff it properly, obviously, this young lady said that they don't recommend it if you can't staff it properly. What I'm saying is, if you don't staff it properly and it creates a nuisance, we're not going to wait a year. They'll hire a police officer, and guess what? You're not going to back up under Kindermack. You're going to leave. And you wave on, or you park there and get out of the car.
Right. And then we will hear.
And I think then, again, that's up to the board if they like my idea, but then what I'm saying is, I think it's $150 an hour or whatever it is. At that point, there'll be an incentive. Either you fix the problem quickly, because it's costing you a lot of money to do this, or eventually you'll run out of money and you'll close. So that's basically it. But at least it gives you an incentive that you need to do something. And projections and whatnot, and I'm sure we're going to have 3 traffic engineers. All I can tell you is,
That's a party.
you're going to have 3 different opinions, because each person is a different stakeholder in the game.
So we're going to hear further traffic testimony?
You're going to hear a lot further.
Okay.
But based on what I'm hearing, you want to get it up to 200 cars an hour, because that's how you make money.
Okay.
And if you got to put enough people in there to serve that much product, in order to work, you need the 200 cars. Otherwise, it doesn't work on the operational side. You're paying too much in salaries.
Right. And
So I get it.
yeah, we're kind of a worst-case scenario, being the most populated state and the most populated county in the state. Most populated state in the union, or densely populated and populated county, and one of the busiest roads in the county. So just want to make an observation. I don't know if this came up when you were considering Dunkin' Donuts in the beginning, but these corporate, as somebody who runs a nonprofit in the town, helps run one, these corporate companies are very unapproachable with, here she's saying we're going to have a 25% increase in income. But they're very unapproachable to the nonprofits, like the
Ms. Powell, I'm sorry, but I have to stop,
Yeah.
I have to stop that kind of line of questioning. You can ask questions about what was testified, but you can't really get into
Right, but
their
she's representing
philanthropy.
corporate, so that's why I thought it might be
Right.
appropriate to bring up that.
That's not really appropriate here, I'm sorry.
Okay,
If you want to talk to her afterwards, you're welcome to.
okay, thank you. That's it for tonight.
Okay, I think we're on the 4th row, and we're on the 5th row. Okay, a motion to close to the public?
So moved.
Move a sec.
I have one follow-up question.
Well, you're not the public, so you can speak anytime you want.
So, there was an article in the Institute of Transportation Engineers, probably 10 years ago, that talked about the number of trips coming into a convenience store based on the volume of traffic on the road. Do you have any knowledge of that sort of, in other words, when you say the store is going to be able to accommodate up to 200 cars an hour, but if there's not enough traffic on Kindercomack Road, it may never get to 90 cars an hour.
If we don't run it very well, it won't get to that.
True,
So
right, people may go to
all of
another
that
one.
makes an
Right,
impression.
right. Do you have any feel for that percentage of the road, or the type of road you're looking for? You're looking for a road with a minimum of X number of cars per day?
So I can only reflect back, so I heard somebody say, and correct me if I'm wrong, 35,000 was the
no,
traffic
that's true.
count on that street?
Yeah.
And it's in the middle of the
I might
block,
be
right?
off. My traffic.
Yeah, I'm not
the
sure
traffic
where
engineer
that
said
number
I could
came
be
from,
off.
but I'll have to go look at it. if I can
Somebody
find
said
it.
approximately
Let's use that
that.
number, right, right.
Typically, in my previous life, we wanted 2 streets, so we were on a
Right,
corner.
corner, right.
Which gives you even more. And what I can tell you, at 35,000, that's probably an average of where we would want to be on one side for a Dunkin'. And so, now we'll talk specifics about McDunkins. About Dunkin' today. So nationally, when we started doing all of this research, we already knew we had a problem before this on our kitchens. The average Dunkin' nationally only does 57 cars in an hour.
Okay.
So even if she doubled it, she's at 100.
Right.
But she can grow to 200, but we have to build a reputation as a brand, which we don't have today. As a matter of fact, in full transparency, the data that we pulled told us that people avoided Dunkin' at peak because they were so slow. And so that's why we're trying to fix our issues. And we can grow, but it's not gonna come overnight. You don't build it and they will come. It's going to come gradually. 35,000, they're probably capable of doing 75 to 100 cars an hour, and it'll grow over the next year if she executes it. But at that, there would never be a backup here. Unless somebody broke down in the drive-through. How's that? And that's happened before.
Again, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a different.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. So we had a motion, we had a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Or any opposed, any abstain? Sir, are you done with this witness?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, it was a pleasure meeting you.
It was
Have
nice
a safe
to meet
trip
all of
home.
you.
We are at 10:44, so as I said, I was going to give you some latitude, and we did. So I guess we're going to have to move on to the next meeting. So let's do some housekeeping here. The next meeting is in July. It's July 24th.
27th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on August, okay. So July 27th, is that good for you? And then I'd like to hear from our clerk to find out what our
Yeah.
schedule looks like.
He said, Tom said the 27th or the 10th. It can't be a whole meeting, but there's time.
Okay, so I have an issue with the 10th, and I think the
Mr.
borough
Barrett
wants to
also-
keep me as the chairman for this.
Okay.
We may have to look at an August date, just based on availability on my side of the,
All right, so August 10th would be the first meeting in August. The issue is,
Not available, and my planner's not available.
well, and I'm not available, and I think the borough wants me to continue with this application in this seat.
I wouldn't be available that night either.
So I'm going to say, yeah, because we're going away together anyway, right?
Yeah, Myrtle Beach.
I'd ask either we do the second meeting in August, or perhaps even a special, if it's
Well,
possible to have.
so
it.
the special meeting is an interesting concept. Let me discuss with our clerk tomorrow what our schedule looks like, because I know there's stuff in the pipeline, and I want to be able to give you our full attention. So a special meeting might be a good idea. And then our clerk can circulate to the people that are important, including the people on the dais here,
The
to
only-
find out who's around.
The only thing we'd have to do is carry it to a date specific, so I can
Yes.
have to notice, and
We could carry it to
The
our
next
next
meeting.
meeting, the 27th of July, and then we can make an announcement on the record.
that would work.
Any date after August 10th is open, so you can put them on.
I'm sorry, I can't hear
Any
you.
date after August 10th, any date after August 10th is open,
Okay,
so you can put them on for any date after the August 10th.
okay.
So August 10th's out, good.
So What's that second meeting in August?
The 24th.
So how's the 24th tentatively, and we'll try to see what everybody's schedule is. I am around. So,
But we'll carry to the July 27th.
yes, we're going to carry to the next meeting, and then we'll carry it from that meeting forward.
All right, so the takeaway I hear is that August 24th is probably our worst-case scenario, and sometime between now and the 27th, we'll see if there's possible something sooner.
To squeeze a special meeting in. Mhm.
Exactly.
Ed has my schedule, well, we'll have my schedule tomorrow. But it's just that week.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. I thank everybody for staying a little late tonight, particularly Lisa.
Would you agree to carry, to extend the time for the board to act until the 27th, and then if need
Actually,
be-
we'll extend the time within which the board to act through August 24.
Okay.
And just so I have on the record, the matter is being carried to July 27 at 7:30 for purposes of continuing the hearing and discussing scheduling at that point.
Yes.
I thank the members of the public for showing up tonight. It's nice to see some happy faces out there. And I will accept the motion to adjourn. So, Mr. Pfeffer, second? Second. Yep. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstain? Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Jim, I'm gone the first 2 weeks of August.